This is the Gray Space Podcast.
Welcome to the Gray Space Podcast. My name is Luke, and in this episode, in this discussion, Gabe, my brother, and I will be talking about the film Tree of Life, directed and written by Terrence Malick, I guess I should say. Written and directed. Why can't I say it the other way? I can. Directed and written by Terrence Malick. Very, honestly, difficult film to discuss. In some ways, a difficult film to watch. I mean, it's very engrossing, but you really have to pay attention to figure out what is going on, if anything. So there's a lot of room for interpretation, and that's what we get into in the discussion. We cover a lot of territory, from the references to the Book of Job, the creation montage scenes, the father and the mother, masculine, feminine dynamic, and the midlife crisis. We try to talk about the beach scene at the end. If you haven't seen the movie, I recommend watching it, but because there's that summary at the beginning, I think you can probably enjoy it, having not seen the film, if you haven't. Okay. One more thing, if you're watching on YouTube, I would really appreciate if you could give the video a like. That helps the channel grow. It's a pretty new channel, relatively new channel. And otherwise, if you're listening elsewhere, check out perhaps our Patreon. It's a new Patreon. We just launched it. And personally, I would recommend signing up for the $50 a month tier. I mean, that's just a personal recommendation. You can do whatever you want. But anyway, check it out. Support the channel. Give the video a like if you can, if you're on a platform where you can give likes. And otherwise, enjoy the discussion. Let's get into it. This film aligns very, very closely with my worldview.
Mm-hmm.
Very closely. And I think, unless I'm wrong.
I'd be curious. Yeah, I would like to know how, like in what way.
Well, I think, man, that's why I'm
What's the
scared
best
of
way
this.
to start? How do you usually start?
That's
Do you
why I'm
describe
scared
the
of this
film
conversation. What we've tried to do in the recent ones is try to do a summary, but it's so hard with this movie to do a summary of what it's about, so that if people haven't watched it, they can still have some, like, at least a reference of what this is kind of about. But since you've seen it so many times,
Well, I guess I could try.
You want to take a stab at it?
I'll take a stab at it. So the film is by Terrence Malick. I think it was his 5th feature film, and it's loosely based on kind of an autobiographical story of his upbringing in Texas. And I think he was raised in Oklahoma, areas like that, and his father worked for an oil company. Anyway, the film structurally, it's kind of bookended. The same character, Jack, bookended at the front and back by him in this existential crisis in life.
Wrinkly old Sean Penn.
At the beginning of the film, he is in the midst of his existential crisis. And then, it's, I guess, not completely bookended. So beginning and end have him in the latter stages of his life. And then the middle chunk of the film is his youth growing up. And then in between that, at like the very center of the film, there's this flashback to like the entire history of the cosmos.
That's actually not in the middle of the film. It's in the first. It's at the end of the. It's at the end of the first
act.
Yeah.
But it's. Yeah, I would say it's closer to the middle than.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're right. So you're right. Yeah, the first. I guess the second, third is probably the childhood.
Ice cold water.
I guess. Yeah, and the latter. I mean, it barely is bookended by him being old again at the end, but.
That does give it a little bit of structure. I mean, it kind of frames it. Anyway, yeah. Let's lay out the basics first, and then we can swim around in it.
You can kind of see the whole movie. I mean, you can tell he's imagining things from his youth. So the whole movie could really just be a moment of him sitting in a chair and thinking back to like everything that's happened in his life in just a second.
Not that
Maybe.
it matters,
I don't know,
though. Really,
but,
I mean, does it?
Right.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, existential crisis. What is it to be here to suffer? Okay, so yeah, he's old. He's in an existential crisis. You can tell he's not satisfied in his work. He's kind of wandering around, mumbling about pointlessness of everything. And he has flashbacks to his youth. He had a brother that apparently died tragically, and it affected their family, especially his mother. And actually, the first section, very first phrase of the film is by the mother. There's two ways through life, right? The way of nature and the way of grace.
Yeah.
And so the father figure is is the example of the way of nature, the harder elements, the brutal elements of nature. And then the mother exemplifies the way of grace, being more loving, forgiving,
Floating
nurturing,
around in the air.
literally floating in the air. Yeah, magical flourishes like that. Yeah, and so then the child is stuck between both of them. Kind of, I guess you could say he's like one of those characters from the Jordan Peterson.
Well, definitely going to get into that later, for sure.
Whatever. What do you call those? Triangulation or something.
Yeah. Well, you got the father and the mother.
There's a very bad way to
middle.
explain it, but yes, he's in the middle between his father and mother, seeing these two ways he can go through life. He then goes through everything human beings go through growing up, having these two competing paths through life. And what to make of that then? And it seems like maybe he might have followed the path of his father, perhaps more than his mother, and that's what has led him to certain regrets, or maybe not. But that was my interpretation of it to a degree.
Took his father's advice too much, and then realized he needed to reset the scales. Yeah. I want to. Can I add one thing to your summary?
This is a bad plot summary because I'm giving opinions on.
So there's a crisis. The guy, he's got the father and the mother inside of him. There's even a line, as a child, always you wrestle inside of me. That's what he says about his father and his mother, which is pretty apt. The way that it's framed is sort of the real meaning is visual. What you're supposed to get from it is visual, and the dialogue is not inconsequential, but it's sort of
it's not literal.
A slight mental note that's not even an actual thing.
It's
that's
more
ever
of the
said.
subconscious element of
right.
Or it's almost like a prayer, but not literally a prayer to God. It's more like it's your subconscious. I think more like.
Well, normally when you have a flashback of a thing that happened in the past, you say, it was a cold and rainy night, and me and Squim walked into the bar. It's not like that. It's more like there's a word that kind of is a companion to the thing that's unfolding in front of your eyes. Yeah,
and I don't know how much you want to divide it up, talking about the film in general, but I guess you could get into the whole technique and how that, because that's a huge part of the film. I think
that's a good starting point. But the other thing I wanted to mention besides that was the centrality of crisis and tragedy in how and what forces the balance between the father and the mother to sort of play out. In other words, they're sort of in equilibrium. And it seems like the thing that pushes it one way or the other, or one of the things that is you have to grapple with as a human, or he has to grapple with, is tragedy, which is the death of his brother, which his father and mother each have to deal with. And that's set up by the line in Job, which is, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? What do you know? Job is, by the way, my favorite book of the Bible. By far. I love the book of Job.
Yeah.
I do. I think it's great.
No, yeah, and that's what's so great about the whole either evolution or creation sequence after the first act, because that's that context of this is what you have no idea what you're a part of. You have no idea the scale, right?
Idiot. Yeah.
Right. Nobody consider. I mean, it took 4.5 billion years for you to get to your small problem.
Right. Well, I think, but it's presented in two ways. It's presented at the point of crisis, and then at the end, it's the same material is presented at the point of resolution. Kind of.
Which one specifically? Okay. Yeah.
Well, the montage. The elements of the montage are brought back in at the end, but with a different.
Oh yeah.
There's a different angle, slightly.
Different feel to it.
Different feel to it. Yeah, but it's the same. It's the same shots, basically.
Some of it, yeah, because it's not. I don't remember it being. I didn't know if those were just shots of nature so much, or you thought it was actually part of the creation sequence, or maybe it was like a completion of that same sequence.
Well,
or something.
They show the supernova again, and they show the planet again, I believe, and they show I think they show another meteor or something moving through space. They show scenes of intergalactic grandeur again.
Yeah.
You can YouTube, by the way, anybody watching that who hasn't seen it. You can just YouTube if you don't want to watch it. Just YouTube that.
There's another Why can't I think of the name of it? Voyage of Time. You've heard of Voyage of Time or no? The documentary that was basically like a continuation of that sequence, but a bit more in depth.
I think I have
There's
seen that. I think
multiple-
you might have sent me a link.
Well, I don't know. I don't know where it is online. Actually, I don't think it's ever been released. I had to go. I paid like $20 to watch the 40-minute movie. It's somewhere in New York when it was out for a couple days.
But
But
I guess I must have just seen the clip on YouTube. You can search YouTube creation sequence. Tree of Life.
yeah. Well, no, I'm saying this is a whole separate film that he
Right.
did that's like that, but it goes into far more detail about that. So if you like that sequence, then you would like this too. But that one actually goes beyond then to where the universe collapses back into itself, like the reverse initial blast of the the Big Bang. It hypothesizes further. So it even if you applied that to this movie, it would make the whole thing seem like you're just stuck in this cyclical expression of nature, and then you're trying to make some sense of it.
Well, that's I think the central point of the movie. I mean,
Mhm.
life is the axis mundi, or the maybe that the finding meaning in life is the tree of life. The tree of life is the point at which human experience meets this grand cosmic stage where we exist for a finger's snap in geological time and in the vastness of the universe, size and time. That's the axis mundi. I think that's the tree of life. The reason it's called the tree of life is a reference to the axis mundi, the world tree, and the place where
I think that, yeah.
the heaven or the cosmos meets the earth, the realm of the earth, and the source of all life.
I
And
think
she
another
says, if you
right.
don't love, you don't. If you don't love, you don't have life.
That's like the most important thing of the film. Yeah, unless you love, your life will flash by.
Yeah.
I think that's the phrase. But yeah, well, also in the Garden of Eden, there's the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and they're not supposed to eat from either of them, I believe. But Adam and Eve eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which then cast them into sin, and so they're deprived of the tree of life. So it could also be like humanity in its Job state, having eaten of the knowledge of good and evil, will not have access to the tree of life, really, at least not while they're part of this pattern or something. I'm not sure, but
Well, okay, that's an interesting way of looking at it. We definitely got to get into the tree thing because I think that could also relate to Buddhism, which is what I kind of took from it as well. Anyway, let's start with the cinematic part. And I think you can probably speak to that better than I can. The way that
maybe
it's
not.
filmed.
Basically, he just throughout his career, he kind of introduced more elements of, I guess you could say, like impressionism in film. So it's not so much that even shots themselves are even literal, but they evoke a feeling, I guess. So it's kind of like pointillistic or something. It's it evokes an emotion from the image rather than literal. Like the scenes of you get the idea of the child being in the womb and being born when he's got his bedroom filled with water,
Right.
and it's kind of surrealistic, and it doesn't match anything else in the movie.
But it's in that part and at the end.
And there's some subconscious element about that it's actually more true than the literal image. Same with the mother floating in the air. She becomes magical for like half a second, and it gives you an idea of what the mother really looks like to the child, but it's non-real. And he actually got into this even further in his like trilogy of movies after this. It was To the Wonder, Knight of
Autobiographical,
Cups.
right?
Autobiographical generally, yeah. But the thing about them is they go extreme on this, so much that they're hard to watch unless you go into it with the idea that this is what they are. So it's that basically what is being filmed is completely non-literal. So these two characters are not actually frolicking on the beach, but that's the nature of their relationship or something. Whatever is occurring on... I think that's what it is, though. Yeah. It should be, but people will say, "Well, this is boring."
Why are they on the beach? What the heck?
I don't understand why are the women twirling and
Yeah.
spinning, and there's so much spinning and so
But I
many
think-
lights.
I don't even think that we have to dwell on that because, I mean, if you watch it and it comes across any other way, then you
I
shouldn't
think
be
the people
watching
that
this conversation.
I'm just saying that because definitely not. But a lot of people don't like it, and they say I was bored. I didn't
bored.
understand. Well, you're not. I mean, it's something to kind of wash over you. You're watching an entire life, like little fragments of somebody's mind. And it
Right.
actually, when you come out after watching it, you feel like you've actually seen inside somebody's head,
Well,
compared to having something acted out, in a normal way.
think about it. Think about a normal movie that shows a flashback of childhood. You see, you stole my pack of gum and all of that sort of basic stuff.
Uh-huh.
This is far more. It's impressionistic in the sense that it's less real, but as you said, it feels more like childhood. So when I see the scenes of the mother floating in the air and just a moment of something, I remember what it feels like to feel like a single yard is this giant magical
Right.
expanse. And that's a feeling that everyone probably remembers, where when you go back home as an adult, it's like, oh, this is just a tiny little yard.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
as a child, this giant landscape is all mother, father, brother's yard, house. That's it. And it's magical.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, and then later in life, nothing gets more magical.
I don't think
that's as
there's a
magical as
movie.
it
I don't
gets.
think there's a movie that exists that puts some of those feelings across as well as it does.
Right.
It really does. Like that weird scene in the attic with the creepy giant guy and the person going around on the tricycle. That's another surrealistic scene. It's kind of like a David Lynch shot for like two seconds. You remember that?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he's worried about his brother or something. He's got a fear, and he
There's
associates
fear,
fear
definitely.
with a couple different things in a location,
There's
just randomly. But you get the idea.
Well, he's in his room, and there's his brother's being punished, I think, at that time, right? For something he said,
okay,
and
yeah.
then he sees the clown at night. There's the clown that goes under the water, and it actually looks quite scary. And then I think they show the scene in the attic with that giant man, and it doesn't matter exactly what that is. If you say, okay, who's the man exactly, and what's the kid on the tricycle?
Right.
You could break it down, but it's the impression that is a fleeting impression. That's the thing that sticks with you. That's what sticks with me anyway. Far more impactful. But that's what impressionism does. When you look at each little stroke or dot, you go, it's just a stroke or a dot, and then you step back, and I can't remember the name of the painting, but it's one of my favorites. I guess I should know my favorite paintings.
Monet or something.
It's
that's Monet is the only
it's the one on the
impressionist I know.
boat. I think it is Monet. It's the one there's a guy on a boat in the fog, and there's a harbor. I can't remember the name of it, but it's the most emotionally evocative painting there is, almost.
Yeah, but the thing that's to apply it to cinema is, I know people have probably done it before. I don't know. I'm not that well versed in a cinema like Tarkovsky or French New Wave. People probably have done things like that, but I think he takes it to a level that most other filmmakers haven't. So anyway, it's. I think that's what makes it so emotionally resonant. Maybe and it does depend on the person, because these kids' childhood kind of does look like our childhood. It's a similar yard. It's
very similar. Three
parents
brothers
are opposite. Yeah, three brothers running around in the woods. Just like like feelings of when things go wrong, like when he shoots his brother's finger with the BB gun. You have moments like that in your childhood where you remember somebody doing something bad, and it has like that same moment of like, I don't know, there's like a horror element to something like that that's different when you're a kid, and it seems like
probably all from me, right? I was the cause of all of those things, I think, in our childhood
I don't think
dynamic.
So. No, yeah, all those things were expressed very well. Like his weird, somewhat sexual feelings, like his first sexual feelings toward this the neighbor lady, which was been his guilt about it or something. That was interestingly expressed. It seemed. It was subtle.
One that hit me was, I guess a lot of them did, but when they're shooting the frog with the rocket, they attach a frog to a rocket and try to shoot it up, and then they are scolded by their mother, and he clearly has guilt for torturing an animal, right? And that upsets her because she represents the way of grace, which is to be open to nature. Not that she represents nature in their sort of male-female dichotomy, but she is kind to all living creatures. Compassionate, forgiving. And I remember things that I did in my childhood that were cruel, and I didn't have anybody tell me that they were, but then afterward I felt remorse.
Well, see, I was always more like the mama's boy. I was always more on the way of grace, but that didn't help me very much. I mean, it just made me emotional and cry all the time.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking about sort of that dynamic that you remind me more of um,
The guitar playing
other
kid.
brother, yeah, and I
Yeah.
remind myself more of I did bad
You kind of
things,
look
even
more
though
like him too.
I
You
didn't
actually look more like the Jack character as well.
because I don't. He said I do things that I don't like, and I used to do things that I don't like too.
Huh.
Do you
That's
remember?
really interesting.
Do you remember one time our neighbors were shooting a BB gun at a raccoon in a tree?
Oh, that's just what I was thinking about when I was talking about that. Yeah.
And there was a moment when when given the choice to either take the BB gun and shoot the raccoon or not and take a stand, I decided to give in to the pressure and shoot at the raccoon with the BB gun in the tree. And that's one of the few things in my life that plagues me as a sort of
Really.
it really bothers me to this day as a thing that I did in the past. It really, really bothers me. And I know that I did it it's a thing that I hate, but did it for some sort of rebellious reason, even though, I mean, the dynamic and our parents are different, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I think people just have. I don't know if it's because of our parents were a certain. Well, I mean, certain things are, but like just you're born a certain way, I guess, with a certain outlook, and things might matter to you earlier or later. You have different perspectives at different ages. So
Yeah.
some people are just more naturally set up to see things that way, or be more emotional at certain times. I don't know. Different developmental stages. You never know. But yeah, I know what you mean about the feeling of that.
Yeah. The cinematic technique of saying things, we kind of talked about it a little while ago, but saying things or short lines that are then sort of paired with the visuals. I sort of took that as what you're seeing is the 90% of what Terrence Malick is trying to say, and the words are meant to sort of draw maybe not a box around it, but say this is the way in which it is framed. So I mentioned something about I can't remember any of the specific lines now. I should have written them down, but some of the specific lines combined with, for example,
he does that a lot. Yeah, since the thin red line, he did that too. Like there's like right at the beginning, or there's a section of the movie where they're at war, and it's a big lead up to the battle, and it's all exciting and tense to get to it. But as soon as the battle starts happening, he cuts to like an image of a baby bird, like crawling in its own blood, like the most pitiful thing you can see, and it just like rips all the tension away and just makes you feel awful or something. And I don't know if it's right around there, but the voiceover underneath is like, why does nature contend with itself? Which is basically saying like whatever inherent evil in nature. And I think the first shot, maybe it's near the first shot in the movie, there's just a crocodile like with its eyes peeking out of the water. So like it's like there's these like chaotic, cruel things in nature, and the movie is about war specifically. But so it's a framing thing. Why does nature contend with itself? What is this circumstance we find ourselves in?
Yeah, and a lot of the lines are sort of tie back to that Job line as well. A lot of the lines are things like, why did this happen to my brother? Why did my brother die? Why is this thing Why did this tragic thing happen? It's sort of contextualizing it with trying to understand why a creation or the creator or God would allow this to happen to people who did nothing wrong or did all the right things. Why would I went to work, I tithed, I never missed a day of work, and then I lose my job? Why would this happen to me? It's kind of, a lot of things are framed in that sort of callback to Job.
That's true. Yeah, and I think the mother like takes the opposite path of him. You can tell based on his life later, he must have continued to like hold it against God or something, because of just him being blocked off or something from how he feels. He's not taking the way of grace. But the mother, I think, after her initial pain of whatever happened with the brother, doesn't she just accepts and like says, "I give my son to you," and that's it? Like she just, which is that's still the way of grace. That's
the end of the film is the doorway and the salt flats. There's a doorway in the salt flats, and she sort of lets him walk through the doorway in the salt flats, and he walks.
She leads him
along
through it, right?
Right. Yeah. To say even she in this tragic, horrible situation, the worst thing that could ever happen to a mother, is able to cope with it, because it's not that she has a philosophy, but it's just who she is to find the not the graceful way through every situation, but accept reality as it is, which is kind of, I wonder why the dichotomy is nature versus grace, because actually nature is the way it is. It is the way it is, and it's brutal. And she's just accepting of the way it is, right? She's not stressed about their financial situation. She is able to accept.
I
the
think
loss
the
of
way
their
of
son.
grace. No, I think it's because it's unnatural, or it's considered to be unnatural, or it's something that like supersedes nature. Which actually, I have an example here. I did bring one example. People have referenced Malick probably having an affinity with Simone Weil. Have you ever heard of Simone Weil? This is a book called Gravity and Grace. It says Weil, but I guess it's pronounced Weil.
Okay.
She was a Christian lady back in the 1930s and 40s who just did all kinds of, just like she would think through her thoughts about certain elements of Christianity or life in general and just write them down. Some of them are interesting. Some of them seem really crazy. But she was an interesting character. She worked like with the poor. She kind of ended up starving herself to death because she wanted to suffer so much, because she thought that was truer than enjoying life. So she was a little out of touch, maybe. But I find myself respecting her. But her whole idea in this Gravity and Grace, which I think is just another way of saying what Terrence Malick did. But I'm not sure I understand it. So let me just read the first part of what she says here. All the natural movements of the soul are controlled by laws analogous to those of physical gravity. Grace is the only exception. We must always expect things to happen in conformity with the laws of gravity unless there is a supernatural intervention.
The supernatural intervention in this case, not a literal supernatural intervention, but a
not
supernatural
literal
intervention
through the form of action of where, like, which I think is what the dinosaur scene was about.
That was a little cheesy.
It was, but I mean, I think that was the point, though, was that I guess you could just call it a evolutionary improvement, maybe, to learn that not always attacking or killing can also be a good thing. But it was, some people might attribute it to supernatural intervention, but it could also be considered like a transcendence to a better state of reality, which is unnatural. It's not the natural way.
Yeah,
it's not just feeding.
Oh, so I guess by nature in this film, nature is chaos, self-protection.
Whatever. It's like the Darwinian idea of survival of the fittest, rather than
fittest, right?
Stronger of the. I was about to say it wrong. This one.
Alligators with guns.
Yeah.
They gave the alligators guns.
But I think that was the point. I think it's
to transcend
there's
nature.
Strength in the unnatural.
Yeah, to transcend nature is to not only accept the way that nature is, or maybe transcending nature is partially accepting the way that nature is, but also not only becoming a sort of a leaf in the wind, in the sense of, oh, if the wind is blowing this way, then I will. Everyone is cruel to each other and looking out for themselves. I will do the same. Is to have sort of your feet planted a little bit more, in a sense.
I think so. Yeah. Well, I mean, if survival of the fittest is the truest thing, then always being like brutal would always work. But human beings throughout history have found out that you need compassion in order to actually evolve, or at least to stay strong. You need human relationships. That's like love or compassion itself is a trait that certain groups of animals that have risen to the top have.
The alpha males in the troop of baboons are the ones not who are the strongest physically, but are the ones who have built reciprocal relationships with other baboons and are respected by the females. And the strongest baboon doesn't necessarily or even usually win.
Yeah, or I mean, like elephants, they actually care for and love the people or the other elephants that are in their whatever group of elephants. I don't know what a group of elephants is called, but
That's one thing that really struck me when I was volunteering at the Baboon Center in Africa. Is there was a big enclosure, and they were preparing the baboons to be released. And they had a special release mechanism, but they were preparing them for release. And the troop had worked out all of their social hierarchy, and you had these patrols on the outside, and these were the baboons that were just giant hulking baboons with huge teeth, the ones that would rip your face off if they had the chance. And then you could see the alpha male in there with binoculars, just kind of like sitting cool. So cool, surrounded by a couple of females. Then the small young adolescents in the top of the trees looking out for any dangers that might be far away. And if they saw, for example, me coming, they'd go, ah, ah, ah. And they'd set up a cry, and then they'd decide what to do based on that cry. Now, it's just a human walking up to the enclosure. Don't worry about it. But they had raised that alpha male from birth, basically, because his mother had been killed by local farmers, and they were able to sort of they had charts of the personality types of all the baboons, and the ones that were on the perimeter were the ones who were the Brad Pitts. They were the ones who were maybe the strongest, the best fighters, and the one in the middle was, you could read his personality profile. When he grew up, he was very social, and he was famous for doing reciprocal
activities.
Eat the ticks out of the other baboon's fur, right?
Helping people clean.
Grooming, that's the word I was looking for. You do reciprocal grooming. But he was also strong, but he wasn't the strongest. He was sort of in the middle, and he had, these giant big baboons on the outside doing his henchman work, and it was very interesting to see, and it reminded me a lot of human civilization. It's very similar.
Yeah, just just in the most basic sense, human fathers or monkeys, they could be so brutal that they would kill their own children if they thought that they might be a threat to them when they grow up or something, right? But there's the need to be compassionate towards this creature. I guess it's yours too, so that taints it a little bit, but still, any compassion at all. It could have just been a food source. Why not? Some animals,
lunch,
right?
Hot, fresh out of the oven.
Make it yourself.
Yeah. A 9-month brisket.
Disgusting. What were we talking about?
Well, I think we can get into. I wanted to bring up.
It's the way of nature versus the way of grace, which I think is similar to what she said. Gravity versus grace. It's kind of a different way of saying it.
Yeah,
gravity being nature.
Yeah, I get the idea. Transcendence. Transcendence of being merely a leaf in the wind.
Well,
when I say
or
leaf in the wind,
like,
I mean the wind. The leaf takes on the characteristic of the wind. If the wind is dark or the wind is light. Metaphorically, then you do whatever he does.
The Christ example, Christ, instead of just defeating all his enemies with spears, defeat them by being an ideal of his ideas, or make a self-sacrifice or something.
Right.
That's a transcendence of the natural way. Yeah, because the way of nature would adapt to do whatever cruel thing to stay alive. That's the way of nature.
The way of nature is when you go into the gulag and the guards tell you to it's
like
kill someone or throw your wife in a hole. You do it.
It's like going on Survivor or something. Everybody you have to go way of nature to get to episode 2, right? But somebody would go in with the way of grace. Hi, everybody. I'm just here to help.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it would work on Survivor.
Probably not. But I think we're getting closer to not Survivor being the best example, but yes.
I think the Gulag one works though, right?
That does perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah. Or the one. Actually, I think that might be what Malick's next movie is about. The one guy who wouldn't give in to Hitler. The one guy who would go to prison for his unwillingness to sort of I don't know what the story is exactly, but he's in prison because he's not succumbing to the wave of Nazism in Austria or Germany.
He's a conscientious objector in World War II. Refused to join the Nazis, but didn't work out well for him. Called A Hidden Life. I'm hoping to see that this Sunday in Columbus, maybe.
But the intention matters, because I would be a conscientious objector just to save my own skin, to not put myself in any danger. That's why I would be a conscientious objector, right?
Raccoon Shooter might join the Nazis. Depends how old you are.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. That's I mean, as long as I don't have to go to war. Whatever is safest and best for me.
I gotcha. No, yeah, that makes sense. I think his movie after that, actually, that they're filming right now, is about is actually about Christ being tempted by the devil in the desert, I think.
I think Malick should take a break and just make a movie that's all dialogue about two guys in a pizza parlor just shooting the shit. Hey, come on, what are you doing? I'm going to tell you a story about my wife. And then he talks for 2 hours.
That classic Malick dialogue, that pitter-patter, rapid dialogue.
Yeah. It's a split screen, just like this conversation, too. They don't even cut to anything. It's just a split screen conversation, all dialogue.
Right. Yeah, and I get some people, especially with that trilogy he did of the personal films that he did pretty quick, people say he became like a parody of himself with that style, like extremely great cinematography that almost looks like a perfume
Baraka and
commercial.
Samsara. It looks like Baraka in a way. Yeah.
Basically, yeah. But I think that's only if you're thinking of it in a certain way, only if you're superficially reading it. There's always something interesting to get from his work. I think the last shot in To the Wonder, I'm pretty sure, is like a whole human life played out in like 20 or 30 seconds. It's because it doesn't make any sense any other way. This is just my interpretation of it, but it's one of the main characters laying on the ground in the middle of a field, and she just stands up kind of unsure of herself and wanders a little bit and looking around, feeling around, and then like somebody shines a flashlight in her eyes, and that's it. Or so. So I think
that kind of ties to the creation scene, or the montage of the creation of the universe and the asteroid impact that destroyed the dinosaurs, and the microbial life being formed, being created, evolution of life on Earth, and I want to tie that with the Book of Job and my conception of what I think the Book of Job means in relation to that particular thing, and then maybe you can talk about it.
Sounds really interesting. Yeah.
So, the line from Job is, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth, something like that. Essentially, after all of Job's friends told him that, Job, God took away all your stuff. You must be a bad
guy's not working
guy.
out too well for
it's
you.
You, Job. You're a rat.
Oh, yeah.
You must be a rat. Job refused to submit. So Job transcended all of his friends. Job refused to say, no, I didn't do anything that would have warranted this. This is happening to me. I admit it, but I refuse to say that it's happening to me because of something I did, for sin or whatever. So in that sense, you create this character of Job as this not perfect person, but pretty good as humans go, as someone who knows who he is, knows when he's righteous and when he's not righteous, and in this case, he's more righteous than what they suggest that he is. Then the whirlwind comes down, and God says to Job, basically, there's nothing you can say to me, because I'm the creator of the universe. You're just a tiny little human, and even if you're the most righteous among humans, you have no right to even question why I might have done this, or what might have happened to you. All right, now here's some sheep and another wife, but it sets up Job as the kind of pinnacle of humanity in terms of righteousness, and then says, now that's very, very small compared to this omniscient being who you can't comprehend and never will comprehend. So I take the montage of the creation of the universe, the evolution of life, and all of those, that grand montage of the asteroid impact and the all of that, as a way to sort of frame the movie as all of the things that we're seeing here, which seems so meaningful to these people, all of these events that we're seeing, the death of the brother or the son, the midlife crisis, the father who's sometimes abusive, or at least a little bit maybe too strict sometimes, all of that stuff is being played out on a stage that's about that big in the scale of everything.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so, that's kind of what it sets up. because that's why it's first. They do that first to say, okay, now let's look at this. Let's zoom way in.
Oh, I
with the
completely agree.
microscope.
Yeah, so which it's just the macrocosmic and microcosmic connections in
Right.
the universe, that they're all going by the same rules.
Then she says, if you don't love, then your life will flash by. To say, basically, we're in our lives, if we hope to have some sort of grand meaning on this scale of the universe as a whole, time, the immensity of time, the immensity of the universe, if we hope to have any sort of grand meaning in that sense, I mean, forget about it. The meaning that
Right.
we have is the meaning that we find in life, which is to find purpose and to live a genuine life, to find the balance between nature and grace, and maybe to love, and that's what you get at the end, and that's all that you need. You just have to accept that you are meaningless. You have to accept that in the relation to all of this, you're less than Job, and
Yeah.
the stage that you live on is this big in comparison to the billions of years of the history of the universe and the size of the universe. And that sort
Right.
of, so it's sort of just like Job sets up this image of God as this incomprehensible being, then it sets up the universe as this incomprehensible object. So then meaning is found in not the minutia, but the day-to-day, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's not minutia because it's a microcosm of the macrocosm. It does have importance too, even if it is microscopic, because it reflects the nature of the universe in some way. I mean, it's all part of the same thing, even if it doesn't matter. I mean, I guess the mattering of it is, you can't really argue about that, but
well, it's insignificant.
yeah, but for
at
you,
least
for
in
your
some
life,
way.
yeah. I mean, the whole point is that one thing: unless you love, your life will flash by, or something. And I think near there's that shot of like the desert, and you just like a puff of dust. It goes like,
right. But that's what it is. Life
Yeah.
is a puff of dust. But
yeah,
it's just a boop. That's all you are. I mean, if you were looking at the whole universe on fast forward, you and I would just go boop. It would
right.
just be
But that's
that.
only if the universe is important, right? I mean, for
Right.
all we know, like the most important aspect of the universe is the stuff that is this YouTube conversation.
At least it is to us, and that's what I think
Right.
the film is trying to say is, you find your meaning in living in a genuine way in the context that you find yourself in, and if you stray away from that, then you're going to miss the show. And Brad Pitt, the father, says, I missed all of this. I missed whatever he says. I missed the beauty of the things around me, because he was living in the way of pure nature. He was living in the way of being successful and wanting to achieve.
Right.
And because he did that, he's still insignificant, but he's not only insignificant, he's insignificant, and he doesn't even know what meaning can be found in the insignificance. Does that make sense?
I agree. I completely agree. Except that I don't know for sure if it's saying it's insignificant, but I guess, yeah, scale-wise, like you're not going to affect the universe. I guess whether or not it's significant is kind of relative.
It depends on if we're living in a simulation or not.
Right. Yeah. But the whole point is exactly that, though. I mean, you need to find the meaning in your life, and I think it does err on the side of just be more loving, go with grace more often. It's probably the better way, though. You do have to balance. I mean, being where we're at, but you can't just be passive and full of grace everywhere. You wouldn't. I mean,
no, I think that's all. I think that it's easy.
It does say there should be balance, I think.
I think it's easy to see her as a pure good, whereas she might be a pure good. She's also dependent. She's also
Could have stuck up for herself a little, not
naive.
Yeah.
She's also submissive, and so finding in a Petersonian sense, finding a walking in the middle is
women are evil.
where meaning is found. You have to be a young man in order to have meaning
And purpose. And goodness.
It's unbelievable. So there's let's talk about Is there anything else you wanted to mention about Job and why Job is?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, that covers it, and it is a major aspect of the movie. I mean, I don't think it's just that. I think it's like him thinking through a lot of these different things and just kind of trying to make a movie out of it. It's not all one message, but that's definitely a major part of it. If it's the opening verse, it's the framer of the story. So
if we can get Petersonian for a second, let's talk about the father and the mother.
Okay.
You want to talk about there's a clear dichotomy. The dichotomies here are nature grace, father mother, cosmic human, maybe, right? Something like that.
Mm-hmm. I forget all the names of the characters already.
I think it's just Mr. and Mrs.
Not in that. I think his name is Jack. And
it's Jack and Steve.
Yeah, but I'm thinking of
RF.
the Peterson characters, Absu, Absalom, and
he's speaking.
There's different ones.
Well, he's speaking in terms. We're talking about, if anyone listening doesn't know what we're talking about, Jordan Peterson, Gabe and I. Gabe's my brother. Jordan Peterson wrote a book. If you haven't seen our review about the book, maybe check it out. At least watch the last 30 seconds, which is epic.
That part's good?
Yeah. No. The whole thing is fine.
Adequate. You better sound on this one, though.
Oh, yeah. That's the thing. I wanted to go back and watch it, and I started, but the sound was a little shaky. But this time, it's great. No, Peterson talks in terms of archetypes, really. The eternal masculine, the eternal feminine. He doesn't speak about. We don't have to get bogged down in specific people, right?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah. So there's this problem of humanity evolving to the point where it now has the technology to destroy itself. How are we capable of committing such great evils as genocide of the 20th century and things like that? Basically, there's the known and the unknown, which is something that we're always contending with.
Chaos and order.
The known being typically male, I guess, at least in Petersonian terms, and
in
female
mythology
being the unknown,
as well.
and mythologically as well. Okay,
for sure.
So yeah, the known being male, the unknown being female, all having their characteristics descending from there, and then the child being born and dealing with these two parents contending with each other. In order to make their way forward, they need both. They need the whatever is good in the unknown to continue to evolve, to change, because not changing and not moving equals death.
Right.
That's the stagnation of whatever you would get from sticking only with the father.
The unknown is the creative process or the origin.
Right.
Yeah.
So the father can protect you from the unknown in that way, and you need that balance. But the unknown also has good things that you need, but it also could have dangerous wolves that will eat you alive.
Yeah.
So yeah, you always need this balance between the known and the unknown, and the truth is somewhere out there. It's either partially what you know that you need to improve or change depending on the circumstance.
It's an impetus, right? It's an impetus towards something.
Yeah, I'm bad at explaining, but that's basically the Peterson dichotomy. It's not a dichotomy; it's a trichotomy. What is it? It's tracheotomy.
Yeah. The hole.
That explains it. That's why I talk like this.
The hole in the throat is the source of the weird smell coming out of there. Probably it's a little garlicky. And the two nose holes. Because the hairs coming out of the two nose holes represent a deep need for trimming.
Typically. Are you talking about my nose?
No.
We're in HD now, so probably.
Do you trim your nose, or do you pluck, or do you find?
Depends on the situation, I guess.
As you've grown older, do you notice more hair coming out of your nose and your ears?
Yeah, and I have it's not as embarrassing as a nose hair, but I have an eyebrow hair, rogue eyebrow hair that'll get it'll just if I had let it grow, it would hang down here to my face.
Same.
A single one.
Yes, exactly. I sometimes wake up and I find a giant eyebrow that's eyebrow hair that I have to pull out. I need two fists to pull it out.
Right.
And I pull it out. And I notice that my nose hairs especially are growing a lot longer, and I need to trim them.
They're growing a lot lately, yeah.
I need to trim them. So the last couple of years, I needed to trim them almost weekly.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
Nobody zooms in.
Yeah.
Well, the good thing about my face is that it'd be hard to tell. There's a lot of hair going on.
Yeah, that's right.
So.
That's a very good point. That whole mustache could be nose hair.
It could be. Yeah, it's like a nose hair comb over. It's really gross.
A comb around is what it's called.
People come here for a decent conversation about a nice Terrence Malick film, and
They
we're
haven't
talking
made it this far, Gabe.
What if they have? What if there's one nice person out there who's just completely upset now?
The type of person who made it this far is the type of person who loves a good nose hair
story.
Yeah, I would say it seems
They're
to me
following the way of grace, and they.
Yeah, indeed. Well, the nose hair is the way of nature. I mean, that's.
It's not like we can get demonetized.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, we're not even monetizable. Yes. So.
Exactly.
We need about 9,000 more subscribers before that happens. What are you having to drink?
Some red wine.
Oh, nice. This is
Cabernet Seven Onion. Yeah.
Savignon. And this is
Water.
No, this is actually gin.
Oh, really?
I'm drinking a lot more gin recently.
Is that Ryan Reynolds gin?
I'd tried if I saw it. I have never seen it on sale.
That's the only gin I know of. Just because I saw a YouTube video or something.
No, this it's really good.
It's called the Aviator.
Yeah, I think I'd try it if I saw it on sale, but gin's one of those things that gin and tequila. If you find one that's pretty good, it tastes really good if it's good, but the $5 one is so gross that it's undrinkable. But I
never
like
had
gin by itself. Yeah,
never tried it.
It's actually I enjoy it a lot.
I try to stay away from any hard liquors because I enjoy drinking. So I feel like if I got hooked on that, it might be trouble.
Be a booze hound.
Yeah, I mean.
So you mean your drinking now is limited to your stomach capacity? You're too full. 6 glasses of wine. I'm not that drunk.
Nope.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Just medium to soft alcohol for me.
Yeah, but
I'm more of a quantity guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, whatever does the trick for you. Yeah. Jordan Peterson, male, female.
You can cut all that out, right?
No. Yeah. Yeah.
If you wanted.
I guess I could. So I think I'm not sure if it's something that they had to make, that he had to make a main theme of the film, but it obviously is. The masculine and the feminine is a clear theme. That she's not a source of chaos, but a source of life, I think, and a source of. She's presented as a source of purity, but I think a source of life is what it's meant to be portrayed as. And he's a source, or father is a source of order and rules, and he's abrasive, and he makes his children follow exactly what he says. He makes his children call him sir. He's tough, but it's the toughness that forced or that allowed his son to become a successful architect anyway.
Right.
And maybe the creative side, which is maybe less part of his personality, is maybe what allowed him to have the creative part of what an architect has to be. I mean, the reason that I think it's architect is because he's successful, so he's followed the lessons of his father, and he still has bits of his mother's, the source of life, source of creativity there, but it's just out of whack. It's out of balance. So I saw it as sort of, in fact, the world is a place where you have to go the way of the father in order to succeed. You do have to make your own way. You do have to.
I feel, and like I said, I have trouble being successful in this world, and I wonder if that's part of it, because I still am more like that soft, just crying child a lot of the time. So I have trouble being
totally
hard
right.
enough. And,
he's right.
Yeah.
He's absolutely right. Is that the world itself is more like his father is. So the society is his father, and his father is a representation of the way that things are, and everything that he says is true about what it takes to be successful and how you get ahead, and he happens to fail at it, but his lessons hold true for his son, and his son can learn from his father's failures.
That's true.
Once his father has failed to a certain extent, then maybe his father can pull back somewhat and accept his failures and maybe live closer to the way of grace. But it's the way of nature in society because society itself is out of whack. Society itself is out of balance. And also there is something masculine and male about the for whatever reason this strange urge to be respected and succeed and be to acquire property and territory and to have other people look at you and say, wow, look at all of the success that this person has achieved.
What a wealthy man.
Look at all the land you have, because every time they're driving down the road, he says, and that man there, he owns
he's very concerned with property.
He's very concerned with property. He's very concerned
with ownership. And you hear that
ownership.
a lot with just people in like everyday life.
That's right.
They're always talking about, well, he has this, and that didn't work out for that. That's everybody concerns themselves with things like that. And
up to this
people
point,
don't concern themselves with something like if you do the most creative thing in the world, if it didn't make any money, people mostly will say, well, he was very creative, but he never succeeded in life.
Right.
He created the greatest painting that was ever painted. Not that would likely happen, but you know what I mean.
So as a child, it looks like, through the eyes of a child, through the lens of a child, it looks like my father is a monster and my mother is an angel who floats in the sky. But it only becomes applicable when you reach the age of 18. When you reach the age of adulthood, then you realize, oh my God, I should have listened to my father a little bit more. This is the way from the beginning of human history until the present, and maybe the future will be different, but until the present, the father he's right, but only becomes right once you reach adulthood. And until that point,
That's
maybe
true.
It looks like
and
the enemy.
That's interesting too, because if you think about how like evolution would play out, especially like with human beings and where we're headed, like as a planet and species, we probably have to figure out a way to go with grace. Otherwise, the planet's going to be like in flames, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, we're all going to have to become women, I guess, that like are non-sexual. I'm just talking crazy now, but living in a computer with not. I mean, you can't actually just be super male through in perpetuity. It would actually lead to the planet being gone.
Well, and it has. It
has. So it's like in 2,000 years, I wonder what we'll look like if we actually do continue to evolve.
But if you look at
if that's even possible.
But if you look at hunter-gatherer cultures, it's not different in the sense that there is a masculinity in the power structures in a lot of ancient societies. I was just reading Joseph Campbell's Masks of God, which I think should be your next
audio
book, bro. Yes, it's great. There is still, it's kind of the same dynamic throughout most of history, especially in cultures that derive their resources from animals rather than plant cultures. Plant cultures have tended to, especially in the tropical zone, have been mostly plant cultures, and plant cultures have been more feminine. They're about birth, plants coming up, the cycles of nature, and they're
care of you, little plant.
The myths around in all of those cultures tend to be about rebirth and tend to be about renewal, and everything is about bringing back the maybe the harvest or the plants. Whereas once we move to a hunting culture, then the hunting culture is somehow inherently male or masculine, and the inherently male or masculine is the ones who get the food are the ones who have the musculature to go out and shoot a deer, and so they're the ones who naturally hold the power. Not to say patriarchy, but maybe a little bit. But they more so have the ability and the means to provide. I was just thinking,
I don't think any of the modern political ideas about patriarchy or sexual relationships actually apply to anything.
That's why I hesitated to say the word patriarchy, because I don't dig that term either. But I mean,
we'll get called cucks for saying that there's anything positive about femininity.
Yeah. But I think that's the point at which the pendulum swung at the point where maybe there was the more animal-derived, where animals were the source of most of the food, and then at that point the pendulum started to swing toward this way. Now we've reached a point where the planet is being destroyed. So maybe there's a lesson in the film about walking the line between the two in order to...
Yeah, it's just, I don't know if the film comes down on any particular side. I don't know. It's just, I feel like the most important word in the film is that one about unless you love, then your life will flash by. And that's it. I feel like after, because it's mostly like a thought experiment played out on screen by somebody, or this is what my life has been like. I'm kind of ruminating on it. in an artful way, and you can take from it what you will. But the only thing that I know for sure, based on all this, is that unless you love, your life will flash by. It seems like that was like the only statement in the film. Other than that, it was just thoughtful. I don't know if it comes down on any particular side except for that. What do you think it does for sure? Or?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, maybe that's just my takeaway from it. The pendulum swinging maybe too far in one direction and needs to come back toward the other is sort of paralleled by the main character, the architect, reaching a point where he's at basically a midlife crisis for whatever reason, and realizes that he has swung too far on one side.
What do you think about the whole like borderline afterlife sequence then, where they're all on the beach? What do you think that was trying to say exactly? Because that's a pretty tough scene. It doesn't really.
Yeah.
Because it's not like a literal afterlife
not heaven.
Scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's sort of like it's all good in the neighborhood. Just accept. Why is it by the sea? The sea is an immense thing on Earth.
Well,
and
I mean, it could be heaven, I guess, but it's not like
that's too cheesy.
It doesn't really.
It can't be that cheesy.
Well, who's the? I remember the scene where the female character hands the young soul, the boy's soul, a candle to take to the other world before he goes through the gates. It's around the womb scene, like when he is in the womb with the water room, like the floating teddy bear. There's a scene with the young child, which I take to be Jack. This is before he's born. He's talking about his parents having him being born.
Right.
He's a boy, and this female character dressed in white hands him a candle or a flame, and he takes it. And then one of the next shots is it almost looks like an Eastern thing. I don't know if it's Buddhist or what, but it's like a gateway. And he goes through, and I think the next scene is him being born. I took that as him as a consciousness, receiving a soul that was assigned to him or something. And he looks at the same flame on the counter later.
Yeah,
and
what
that
is the
lady
flame?
the lady is also on. I think that's his soul, but I don't know.
The lady?
No, the lady. I don't know if it's God or some sort of spirit or something, but she's also on the beach and gives the son back to the mom. So that would point to her being God. But I don't. That's a little too specific for a movie like this, too.
Yeah, I don't. I mean, it's framed in that context, the context of the Judeo-Christian God. But I don't think it's about. I don't think it's about that.
I think it's like. I think it's. I would think it's almost like a playthrough of the idea of it, without it being literally that. I hope that it's this. I hope I get to see the people I love again, maybe through the spirit of grace. I will believe that, but I don't know. It's not. It doesn't seem like it's literal, but I'm not exactly sure what it is. It's just like a kind of a cathartic point in the movie. So I'm not really sure. I just wanted to know what you thought.
Yeah, I was thinking about it too. I mean, I've been thinking about it for a while. The takeaway I had was, it's by the sea, and the sea is where we came from as a species, probably, and that's where life began, and so that is the source of life.
That's where it will
in
go.
a sort of deeper sense. It's the source of life, and so, it's the ultimate. I don't know. There's immensity, and there's the sea, and it's bigness, and it's the sort of calling back to the scene of creation. It's where we come from, and it's sort of the going back to the idea of Joe being acceptance of this vastness in our.
Yeah, I'd be curious for you to watch the scene with the kid getting the candle again, just to see what you think of that.
Yeah.
I think it's in the pre-birth sequence.
Isn't that right by the scene where he comes out of his room underwater?
Yes, I think it's right before that. So that's what I was saying. I think he's being assigned either a consciousness or a soul. He goes through these gates, and then he's born, which is the scene with the water.
Okay, I'll have to watch that again.
Which, it's weird. I don't know, but I'm glad you liked the movie. I was worried that you wouldn't like it or something. But
no, I agree with you.
Sounds like you liked it.
No, I do like it. It's not one of those movies that I'd watch every day.
See, I don't either, and even it's probably one of my favorite movies, but I don't watch it very often. I like knowing that it's there, and I like knowing I can watch it.
Right.
And I've enjoyed the times that I have, but it's
one of those
too much almost.
It's an
too
experience.
Dense. Yeah.
Well, it's the most of that density is in the childhood part because it's so visceral, and it calls to mind. It's so real.
Well, it's
as
you
real
don't
as
look
any
through,
film could be. about
You don't look
childhood.
through your family photos and cry every day, right? Nobody does that.
That's a very good. That's a very good way to say it. I
So
think.
why would you? Why would you want to do that?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're all trying to pretend that none of this stuff ever happened, and we're just perfectly normal people.
Yeah. We haven't reached our midlife crisis.
That's what humans do, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Give me another 10
Actually,
years.
I'm hoping that my life was like a early life crisis, and I eventually it'll become normal.
You're gonna. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. You've been on the other.
Normalcy in
You've
middle
been.
age,
You've
yeah.
swung the other way. I see.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm starting from the pits.
Yeah. I don't know. The end scene is hard to get exactly what there are so many. I think there are so many possible ways to interpret it that it almost seems pretentious to try.
Mhm.
It's a scene by the sea where he's meeting everybody that he loves who's around him, and so that's the meaning that he has. The sea is immense, but it's also the source of life. It's on the border between
right.
the land and the sea is maybe a place
It's
where
got to be in his head though. Now that I'm thinking of it, because he's there older and younger, right?
yes, that's right.
So
right. I also think that the discussion of what's in his head and what's not is also not that interesting. You know what I mean?
that's
it's
true.
not that important.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
Okay, well, no, which one was he imagining when he's sitting in his office and on the elevator? That's
Exactly what the movie's not about. Yeah.
Yeah. that's hardly the point.
Well, yeah, unless it's something really specific. This is what this real. But I guess what it really means too is probably not what the movie's about. So shouldn't nail anything down too specifically. It's more of a experience to make you think about your own philosophy, I think.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is.
He presents his philosophy in the movie because that's what it means to him, and you can tell there's like sections that do. But yeah, I think a lot of it maybe is to pull your own feelings out. Ugh.
Well, maybe that then so the sea and the place between the land and the sea could act as a sort of canvas for you to, as you're saying, sort of print on your meaning.
That's still an awfully lot. That's still pretty specific. I mean, I guess that the sea must mean something. What does it mean, Terrence Malick?
So the Axis Mundi thing, the Axis Mundi is a concept in myth. It's the source.
Tell me about it, because I'm not familiar with that so much.
So it's it could be the tree of life. It could be the tree that Odin is hung on. The symbolism of a tree is often what it's represented as, but sometimes it's a beam or a ladder or a post or a mountain. Sometimes it's the point at which the eternal meets the terrestrial. It's the point at which it's the origin of life, the beginning point, the center of life. So you could see it as Odin on the world tree, sacrificing himself to himself. You could see it as Christ on the cross, sacrificing himself for all of humanity. You could see it as the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree, attaining enlightenment and providing a path for everyone else after him to follow, so that they can attain the same thing. I mean, it's called the Tree of Life, and so you could say that is strictly the Garden of Eden. But you could also say, in a broader sense, the Tree of Life is where the human domain of sort of common, ordinary life meets this sort of grand, incomprehensible cosmic sphere, and the point at which they meet are maybe finding meaning and love, and that's the sort of the crux of it. But also, it could be the beach between the land and the sea. Maybe the sea is the incomprehensible and the land is the place where life happens, and it could also be the father and the mother. The mother is sort of the source of life, and the father is the order. So
thinking about it, just that this might help your story here.
Not a story. I'm just trying to.
No. I mean, I'm
just trying to spew out a few things.
Your case for it being the Axis Mundi that you're mentioning, because I wasn't familiar really with using it that way. But in have you seen the New World, the Pocahontas movie that you made? Okay. Yeah. Remember the end of the movie when she dies? The last shot of the movie is, I think, her going back on the ship, but it's the ship disappearing into the horizon from the harbor. Mm-hmm. So it's once again like a scene of an ocean, and like the character is, I guess, going out of frame into the horizon of the ocean. I don't know. I'm just saying he's used that image before.
The elves leaving Middle Earth to go back to
Oh yeah.
Valinor.
Well, I mean, just in the whole concept, like from a European perspective, the new world is across this water. It's kind of an axis mundi for the old, probably Western European mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And you could also see it as, and that could tie back to the male female or the masculine feminine thing of Europe is the place where culture has happened, and so that's where order is, and the new world is this place of chaos but also possibility.
Yeah, I think it could mean a lot of different things. I guess there's different things in the movie. Like they have like when they look up in the church, it has the Fibonacci sequence spiral or whatever, the Fibonacci spiral.
Mm.
So there's just a lot of elements in there. I don't know what they specifically mean, but I like that. That sounds good to me.
The spiral is also an ancient sort of archaic symbol that has been used throughout all of human history to represent the source of life, or the place where life.
I mean, I'm sure that's
from.
why it was used in the church in the first place, right?
Yeah.
The people that designed the church likely did the shape for a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
What about so you took philosophy for a while. You were a philosophy major. I don't know that much about Heidegger, but Malick's like a huge Heidegger devotee.
Ah, shit. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Is that bad?
I mean, I don't feel up on Heidegger. I read Heidegger when I was a school.
Well, no, it's very confusing. Like I don't know very much about Heidegger, but he was so into Heidegger that he actually went and met him, like while he was still alive.
Really?
And he, I think he translated some of his works to English. Like the only existing English versions of some of Heidegger's works were translated by Malick.
Crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. No,
yeah.
he like when he made a film, like 2 films in the 70s, and he took 20 years off and just taught school in France. He's more of a philosopher than a filmmaker. So he waited 20 years and came back and started making movies again. So I think everything that's in there is very intentional. But I guess like the whole thing, like the only thing I understand about Heidegger is that he kind of he emphasizes truth being found through some kind of unconcealment of an already existing truth. I think aletheia. That's what I got from it anyway. It's just being in time, and through true being, truth will be kind of revealed or unconcealed to you, made apparent through your actual being in the moment. I don't know. That's all I know. So there's one section of the film, or there's one part where I don't know what it means, but there's a mask that's floating through the water, like a mask that's fallen off.
That's at the very end. At the very end, there's a mask.
I related that to something like that, like it's an unconcealment of a true nature of reality or something. But anyway, I just wanted to mention Heidegger in case you had anything to add.
No, I wish I did, but I feel ill prepared. I read Heidegger in college, but I can't bring to mind I read we read excerpts from Being in Time from and about Dasein, but I just don't feel I can't.
It's hard to make heads or tails of it, really. Well, for a second, I feel like I can half grasp it, but it's like basically a version of existentialism that's definite in a strange way, right? To a Heideggerian standard of some sort.
I think I could have grasped. I think I started to grasp it when I was in school and completely focused on it in that several week period when we were reading the excerpts from Being in Time. But now,
whatever it is, Malick really likes it. So I wonder if being a little bit more familiar with Heidegger would help interpreting his work. I would think it probably would.
Yeah, it probably would. I mean, the mask is pretty. It has to be very intentional, and the fact that it's a theater mask that's floating in the water and falling down, the fact that it's in the water is also something. It's sort of water is the cosmic space that happens when we see what life really is. Maybe it's his father realizing that his mother's nature is somehow not superior to his, but he should appreciate his mother's nature more rather than seeing her as simply naive, and that the mask that's being taken off that allows him to see it is his pride and his feeling that he has to be a conqueror, he has to be respected for his works, rather than seeing all around him as a thing that's appreciated or should be appreciated in and of itself, which is what he realizes when the point at which he realizes that is when he fails. The failure is what allows him to start to see the life around him more like his wife had always seen life, right? I mentioned before, she never stresses or doesn't seem to stress about their financial situation or how much money the neighbors have. Or
honestly, our parents were a little bit of an inverse of that dichotomy, weren't they? A
Yeah.
little bit, to a degree.
Yes, absolutely.
It's kind of funny, but anyway, yeah, I completely agree. It's all interesting to think about. It's hard to know what to say specifically, except just to I think to recommend people watch it. And
Well, she has no catharsis. He does. She doesn't.
Well, she didn't have catharsis, but she had trial. She was more just a Job character who ended up continuing in her Job path, right? I mean, she just accepted.
Hers was not to change, though. Hers was despair or being understandably locked in a cycle of anguish about the death of her son, and then submitting to.
Right. I think does she walk through the woods with her hands up like this when she's despairing? I just see that almost as a moment of a grace versus gravity. Like everything that's happened to her is kind of gravity. Like death itself, took your son, and like things are still coalescing in the universe. You're fighting these oppressive forces that you can't escape from. For her giving everything up to God and saying that like she's free from the burden of not being able to cope with whatever's going on. That's grace transcending the gravity of the situation.
But yes, I agree. But fighting against maybe not how I would say it. Fighting against sort of is sort of like I.
What did I say? Fighting against?
You said fighting against the way things are. Fighting against nature. It's not so much fighting against nature. Is what happens. Nature is the thing that took away her son.
Well,
maybe.
I'm saying like there was no escape. There was no escape for her sorrow. Like she could never have gotten past her sorrow except through the way of grace. There was no natural way to get through it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because that sorrow itself is supernatural. Because a natural order wouldn't have any room for sorrow either, really. Because it would just be all about, it would be pain, but not sorrow. Sorrow implies compassion, which is more of like a grace-oriented element, right? I mean,
yeah. So why do you think they chose death, especially death of a child, to illustrate they're trying to illustrate the way of grace using the death of a brother and a son to do it. The death of a son is kind of an unnatural thing in the sense of parents are
I think it
supposed
was
to outlive their
autobiographical.
children. Oh, really?
Malik's brother killed himself.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, I think that's why. But, I mean, also it's a decent example. I guess it could have been something else, but yeah, that's why in this particular movie.
But it is also a good vehicle for creating the or bringing out the idea of grace and how to respond to tragedy. You could say Job responded to tragedy with grace in the sense that when God took away everything from him, when God killed his children and his wife and took away everything and made him sick, that his response was a response of grace, and that his friend's response was a response of more of nature. The response of nature is to give in to the sort of the status quo and accept that you must have failings and your fate is in your hands. That sort of way of thinking about the world is how his friends see the world, and also how Steve's or Jack's father sees the world. And the way of grace is the way of Job, which is the way of saying, these things have happened to me, but I am not the cause of these things that have happened to me. The things that have happened to me have happened because this is just the way things are. This is how things are playing out, and I don't know why it's happening. which is what Job does. And I think that that's what she has to accept when she's walking in the forest with her hands up. She's sort of saying, well, she has to eventually say, I give my son to you. Mm-hmm. And walking in the forest with her hands up is sort of not a surrender, because that sounds a little bit dramatic, but sort of to say, maybe accept that the universe is giant and incomprehensible, and that there's no coming to grips with, okay, I did this action, and then because of that, this bad thing happened to me, and that's how the world works, and it's very reciprocal. It's not very reciprocal, so the best thing you can do is walk through the trees with your hands up and say, I don't know, but I have to accept that this happened.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, though, maybe going back to the shoreline scene, then maybe the only alternative for people that have gone through something like that is to believe that they're going to get the shoreline scene. It's the only way to transcend that kind of sorrow. You can't just say, well, the universe ran over my son. It's pretty big.
The universe ran over my son. I imagine the universe with a bandana and sunglasses on in a Camaro. The universe listening to Metallica.
He's a new Mario Kart character called the Universe. And
it's a Smash Bros. Character. Yeah. Yeah, he's driving. He's listening to Metallica. He runs over your son. Oops! He just keeps driving.
Actually, my son slipped on a banana peel that the universe left behind him. Yeah.
The universe is making my camera blurry.
What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do? The universe loves Metallica.
I hope there's a beach out there that's in focus.
I love the idea of a universe as a Smash Bros. Character or a Mario Kart character. Who are you going to choose? You got Toad, you got Yoshi, and you got the universe.
Someday we'll find out that's what's really been going on. That stupid thing to say.
I wanted to bring up something from Buddhism, because when he's reflecting, he's at some sort of crisis point. I mean, old Jack, wrinkly Jack, far wrinklier than he should be, but whatever. Sean Penn wrinkles early. That's what we can say. That's a fact.
He prunes.
He prunes. He prunes young. Sean Penn.
He only smokes 5 to 7 packs a day. All right.
Yeah.
And he's an actor.
Yeah. One time I saw Sean Penn on, I can't remember which street it was, Upper East Side, and he was extraordinarily wrinkly. And both he and the lady who was with, she was wearing sweatpants. And they were both just, they were smoking 2 cigarettes each.
Oh,
that could be slander. Not 2 cigarettes each. They were smoking a cigarette each, but
just one each.
They were
lightweights.
Yeah.
Probably use filters too.
Yeah, I can't remember. I didn't check that carefully, but
you were saying though about Buddhism.
Yeah. So at a time of crisis would be the point when the Buddha, or Gautama Siddhartha was under the Bodhi tree, determined to achieve enlightenment after trying everything. So maybe I can go back for a second. The child Jack is slowly introduced as a child to these things that sort of wake him up to the adult world. He sees the criminal and his mother giving water to the person going into the police car as a criminal.
The wounded kid.
Wounded kid. He sees some of these things that, and he wonders to himself, he realizes what mortality is. Are you going to die? You're not that old, he says to his mother. Are you going to die? Is this going to happen to all of us? Can we all become sick people? Can we all die? Can we all get old? All of these things are going to happen, and he's experiencing this as a youth, which is the same thing that the Buddha experienced as a child in his father's palace. He was on walks in the palace. His father, an attendant took him out on walks, and each time he saw something different. He saw a sick man. He saw a dead
I remember.
Man. Yeah, and
Buddha, you mean from the Jordan Peterson book, right?
So those things sort of shake him out of this childhood into adulthood and an acceptance of this wider and larger world. And that's what sort of shakes him out of his childhood into an acceptance that he can't go back from, which is that sexuality is part of his personality, and he's beginning to understand bits and pieces of that, and he wishes he could go back and not experience it. Doesn't he mention that? And there are pieces of his nature that he's not happy with, when he shoots his brother's finger with the BB gun, and when he acts like his father. He pretends to be his father and then becomes his father because he pretends to be his father by sort of being a tough guy with his brother. He
Put that over there.
Yeah, he does things like that which sort of wake him up to the more adult world, and that parallels the Buddha's journey. But then the Buddha went on this longer journey of becoming an aesthetic in the forest, and begging for his food or eating nothing, and trying to achieve enlightenment, but failing until he resolved to do it under the Bodhi tree. And at that point, then there was a similar to Christ temptation, where these spirits came out and tried to tempt him to move from under the tree, right? So in the same way, he's, as an adult, sitting in this chair thinking through his childhood, and in this moment of crisis, it's the childhood which bubbles up to the surface. And it's very similar to what I experienced when I was doing meditation. When I was learning meditation, that crazy stuff would, especially from childhood, would bubble to the surface, as though being an adult is sort of this crust that you live on, and you think that, oh, this is who I am. But then when you sit down for a second and start to sort of examine yourself from a different perspective or a different point of view, this insane stuff just bubbles to the surface that you never.
So it's like always, like it's always on loop, like on this record player playing like down below the surface. That's like bothering things, and that you don't know.
But you don't know it. It's creating problems, and eventually, when you try to come to grips with it, it explodes through these cracks on the mantle, or the crust rather. The mantle starts to sort of explode through, and that's where his childhood is coming from. That's why it's coming from his childhood. So I saw parallels between the Buddha and this adult character having his childhood sort of come up through the volcanoes or cracks in the mantle of what he has built as an adult based on his father's.
No, that sounds good. And you said Buddha eventually finds enlightenment by the tree, right?
Right, and Buddha finds enlightenment underneath of the tree, and when he achieves enlightenment, then he has incorporated everything, both light and dark, within himself, and that's something that I've been reading more of Carl Jung recently. In the previous few discussions, we talked about that, incorporating the shadow and the light part of yourself is not being the one who says, oh yeah, I'll be a Nazi prison guard, sure.
I'd love to. I wouldn't, actually, not me.
Yeah, but understanding your shadow is what allows you to not do that, and not that his childhood is his shadow, but there is sort of a bit of a parallel in that. It's called the Tree of Life. His childhood is the thing that's sort of bubbling up, and he's confronting elements of it, and that's what's allowing him to transcend that and reach not a higher plane, but find a balance between the two sides, which is maybe nature and grace.
Yeah, I agree. That's interesting that the Buddha story works almost as well as Christianity. I guess the Christianity is just more specifically mentioned in the story, but the Buddha story works pretty much the same way.
I think it does work the same way. Yeah. Well, did you see it as? In what ways could it be deeply a Christian story? Though?
Not that many, except for specific mentions of grace, I guess, and like the prayers seem directed towards what would more likely be a Christian version of God, but other than that, it's not really a specifically Christian movie, I don't think, except they're in like a church, like a Christian church that seems apparently Christian, but I think it's more of a spiritual film. Doesn't seem like it's very directly denominational.
Yeah. What do you make of his father being a musician? That's an interesting choice.
That he wanted to be a musician. Yeah, I wonder if that's another thing that was just autobiographical, which is why it seems a little strange.
Maybe you know more about Terrence Malick than I do. Was his
might.
father a musician?
I forget. I know he worked in the oil fields like this character's father does. So I think it's possible, but I forget that detail.
But don't you think it's strange when he goes to his children, "You call me sir," and then he goes over to the piano and goes, and plays a beautiful song on the piano? Isn't that weird?
That
seems intentional. I mean, like, why would you do that? Why would you?
Well, I feel like somebody that was just worrying about, like, however it would be an analogy to whatever point he was trying to get across would have thrown something like that out. Well, he can't be a piano player. This doesn't make sense. Like,
yeah,
exactly. The suits at Disney would have said.
Son, you better call me sir. Now turn the page of my organ music.
Right.
Doesn't seem right.
Yeah, they would have made him, like, on his part-time. What would he have been? Like a
Maybe
boxer,
like cockfight organizer or something. I don't know.
He wanted to be an actual chicken in a cockfight, but he could never.
He wanted to be alpha male in a baboon troop.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very interesting movie. Are you planning on watching any other Terrence Malick movies after watching this, or is it just too boring?
No, I want to watch the next one. What's it called?
Hidden Life.
Hidden Life. It's playing at the local small time theater. I saw Parasite there a couple days ago, which was very interesting.
Was it good? Pretty good.
Yes, it was good.
Watch it.
It's good. It's good. You like Okja? Same director.
I liked Okja pretty well.
Yeah. It's a strange film, but it's
good.
Very refreshing. That's good.
That's good.
I enjoyed it a lot. Maybe not as filled with meaning as this one, but
gonna go watch Star Wars.
I am. Yeah,
gonna be
down
good?
on Star Wars. Probably not. I don't think it's gonna be good. I think it's gonna be bad. Isn't that weird? I think it's gonna be bad, and there's no way I wouldn't go watch it.
I'm looking forward to how bad it is. I know it's going to be bad.
But I'm willing to pay my money to go see it. I'm desperate to.
No, for me, it's like this is a whole sidetrack, but yeah, kind of cathartic because I remember disliking Disney Star Wars day one, walking out of the theater, after seeing The Force Awakens, and everybody around me thought I was the crazy person. But this is all the kind of stuff I was thinking about then. This is just like the manifestation of that. I could see what it was in the beginning. And this is the fruit of your tree, your Disney Star Wars tree.
You mean the Rise of Skywalker is
the Rise of Skywalker? Yeah.
Yeah.
The Last Jedi was the axis mundi between The Force Awakens and
particularly the fight scene where that Red Guard realizes he's off his cue and just I'd better miss. Oops.
Yeah.
Did you see that scene? That's amazing.
There's nothing good about that movie. Yeah.
I think that we agree on that 100%.
Anyway, yeah, I was trying to think of other Terrence Malick movies that you would like. I think the only ones that would match up in the same way as this would be those three afterwards, but they are a little. I mean, they're not tough to watch. They're interesting if you're into it, but I would suggest Song to Song if you watch one of them.
You made three movies, and they're all
three movies between Tree of Life, and they're somewhat loosely autobiographical. To the Wonder is kind of about his relationships that he had, because he was married like 3 times, so his relationships throughout life was To the Wonder.
Is Wonder one of his wives?
I don't remember. Knight of Cups was the other one, and that was kind of more about relationship between him and his father, I think, later on in life. And he's a screenwriter in Hollywood, played by Christian Bale. Also relationships with women. It's a bit weird. And then Song to Song is probably the most approachable of the three. It's kind of a trilogy. But all very like figurative movies, non-literal.
Right.
I mean, some of it is, I guess, could be, but mostly.
So rather than do interviews, Terrence likes to make movies about his intimate life.
Yeah, he doesn't want anybody to take a picture of him.
Yeah, don't take a picture of me, but check out my deep thoughts in my mind, my
Embarrassing
vulnerabilities.
sexual histories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Watch my movie. I made a movie about it.
No. I think he came out and actually did a video interview in the last two. I think when song came out.
Okay.
He talks kind of like this. He talks like Terrence. He talks like Jordan Peterson, but from Texas or something.
Is he from is it Waco that the kid is from? Is that where they are?
Somewhere. Yeah, I think it might be.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think maybe most of all, you would probably just like that Brad Pitt narrated documentary, Voyage of Time. It's good.
Okay. Where can I watch that?
I don't know. Maybe you can't watch that one anywhere.
Yeah.
Too bad. There's I guess there's a 2-hour
Sounds
version
great.
of that narrated by Kate Blanchett that only people that went to certain film festivals ever saw. But it's like basically the whatever evolution or creation sequence in this movie. It's 2 hours of that.
Sounds pretty good. Well,
I'd watch.
I like
I'd love-
Baraka and Samsara. Those films are great.
Mhm.
Those are in my top 10. I love those movies.
Yeah. There's like it's non-narrative, but not quite really. Like there's some meaning, I guess, right? There's like some. I'm thinking of Samsara. I don't think I actually ever saw all of Baraka, but like Samsara,
Baraka is better than Samsara.
Okay. I do like the one in Samsara, especially where the guy has the mold on his face.
Oh, yeah.
Or and he's like constantly remaking himself, and it's incredibly disturbing.
Yes.
It's like a human mass trying to invent itself and destruct itself at the same time.
That's the thing that falls away at the end of life, or when you reach a certain age when you become mature enough to realize the true meaning of life and what life is supposed to be about. When you allow your mask to slip away, because the mask is what you're trying to be like what other people want you to be, and then when you allow it to go, you're able to experience the truth.
Or what about, could it be the futility of self or two? I guess, yeah, he's kind of making himself.
That's more of a Buddhist concept, the futility of self, and that there is no such thing as self.
There's just such a disturbing aspect. I can't see anything like positive about that whole sequence there. Like
the man has clay on his face and he's kind of peeling it away and putting it back and changing the shape. But that's more of it's a critique of the transience of society, and that you have to always be changing yourself in order to succeed or stay with it. Right?
Maybe, I guess so. Yeah, and there, the other good sequence, or one of them, is what about the slaughter of the chickens, the factory nature of it, just the amount of it, how it's so nonchalant, but you see how obese people are, just like, give me that chicken. And
it's so disturbing.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. It's so beautiful, but so disturbing.
Right. And then the Buddhist monks doing the great, what are those sand things called that they make? Those nice pictures they make with
sand. I don't
sand.
know what it's called, but the meaning of it is very clear.
How it just all goes to nothing. They destroy it as soon as it's done.
It's a meditation. The meditation is the point of living is not to finish or reach the completion, but it's almost like an Alan Watts talk. The point of doing it is to do it and not to finish it and complete it.
Yeah, and so, it kind of gets into that could be what the universe does too. Like there's the Big Bang and explodes outward. All this stuff happens, and then it just goes back into itself. Everything gets sucked back in, and it just goes again. It's basically the whole thing could be like a heartbeat, cyclical. Right,
and yeah, so that's why I kind of push back against the idea of things having, and we disagree about this all the time, but the idea of things having some sort of grand meaning on some sort of huge cosmic scale, or in some mind somewhere where there's this ultimate meaning, whereas it seems to me really just it is the process of whether it's a simulation or it's the universe. The whole thing is a process.
Well, that would be
and
kind of also
process,
too mistaking the function for the reason, right? I mean,
but again, reason is just what it's
yeah,
there.
but the reason might not be anything, but it's the only way in which we act or even look at the function of the universe. So, I mean, I don't see any harm in at least being a little religious, as long as you're not chopping any heads off or anything.
Well, I think that's also an interesting point made by the movie, is sort of to say these two individuals, they, or at least the mother, finds an anchor in the connection to her religious beliefs, provide an anchor to which she can connect to this grand cosmic thing. And so if she's a Christian and she has this understanding of God, when her son dies, she's able to find a portal through which she can sort of derive meaning from her son's death rather than
I would
just
say,
live in
like,
despair.
I mean, it's either like,
But that's what
belief or
religion
nihilism.
does.
Yeah,
That's what religion does. But if you're a Buddhist or if you're a Muslim, you can derive the same meaning.
Yes.
Right. So I mean, if this were a story about a Hindu who had lost their child, and they would find the same meaning in their beliefs, and so the movie is about how well, it's not about that, but part of it is
not necessarily. Yeah, I guess
part of grace is having a link to this giant thing that you can't comprehend. It is this giant incomprehensible thing, but your image of what this incomprehensible thing is through the cultural architecture of your belief system is what gives you meaning and allows you to understand your own life, in a sense, whatever that happens to be.
Yeah, I mean, we just get bogged down in the minutia of like what religion has, what sort of truth versus others, which isn't really important. I don't think it really applies to the movie. But I didn't mean to say when if the universe just implodes back into itself, that doesn't necessarily mean that the answer is nihilism or anything.
Well, yes, but nihilism is a philosophy also in and of itself. All of them are
I know, but just
human
to say like
constructs.
that there is no meaning, like the universe is meaningless because of its function, doesn't mean it's meaningless for us. So I mean, nobody acts like it is, and we only get anything out of life if we believe that it does have meaning.
Absolutely.
Right.
But I guess what I was saying is that thing that we believe might take many different forms. There might be many different variations on that. If
it might,
if
but
Malick
I mean,
had
like I
made a
said,
film
you
about
would get into the minutia of like what the ramifications are of those specific meanings, then they might not actually be about grace. It might be about certain form of dominance or something. There's not that many religions that are just about peace. I mean, there are some, but
I would say that the movie could have been very well about a lot of different belief systems or traditions, and that the
that's what's good about it. It's more about
it's very universal.
Right. It probably means something specific to him, but it's vague enough to be universal to people with the kind of belief. It's more about the human experience.
It's about the human experience and finding meaning and purpose within this giant landscape that's incomprehensible and unapproachable. Whereas if we didn't have any handhold, anything to stand on, then we probably would be all nihilists. Nihilism is a philosophy that agrees with the objective reality of the universe, where the philosophy is nothing means anything and everything is pointless.
Like
That's a
objective
philosophy.
reality of the universe, is more like aligned with the masculine or the way of nature, right? Like it's about the empirical form of things and not their implicit meaning value.
You said nihilism, so I would say nihilism is itself a philosophy. I think that nihilism is a philosophy that agrees with reality, but it is not a good philosophy to live by.
Right. So it almost makes you wonder how much reality has to do with living by, or the best essence of living, right? A lot of the best things about life are the most disconnected from reality.
Exactly. But that goes. Yeah. So, and the last conversation that we had, I don't know if you listened to our arrival conversation, but it was.
I actually didn't, because I haven't seen the movie, so I just didn't want to. I didn't want to. I'm sorry.
Well, anyway. One of the things that came up is the idea of the consciousness is a thing that consciousness is a thing that seems to live on the very top film of what's really going on, and that the mind is a thing that involves instincts, the emotions, the decisions that we make are largely made by themselves, and they happen much deeper in the mind, and the consciousness doesn't ever sit back and think, let me make a decision. The consciousness is the thing that rationalizes the decision once the deeper, sort of more animalistic, reptilian decision-making processes have happened. And so I was reading a book about a marketing called Alchemy by Rory Sutherland, and it's
about marketing.
It's about marketing. It's a really good book. It's about thinking differently, and it's called Alchemy, and there's a chapter in it about how things are sort of deterministic and how consciousness works, how the brain makes its decisions on a far more deeper level than it seems to make decisions on a far deeper level than we think actually we make decisions on. We don't, in our conscious mind, don't think, let me make this decision. It happens, and then after it happens, we say, let me tell you why I made this decision.
Let me tell you what I'm going to do.
Yeah. So
thinking about it for a while.
The great quote is something like, decisions, the conscious mind is not the Oval Office, it's the press office.
Right.
Which
is mostly bullshit.
Exactly. The Oval Office is happening way out of our awareness. We don't even know what's going on down there, but it's happening, bubbling far beneath the surface in the reptilian brain.
Right, which is kind of one of the points of being a human, right, is to figure out what you're actually doing, what you're actually thinking, right?
Right, but one of the
why you're thinking it.
The orienting things that allows you to figure that out is the belief system that you're born into, the structure that you have that provides you meaning, that says, when your son dies, what does that mean, and how do you relate that? When she points to the sky and say that's where God lives, and she, when her son dies, she has a sense of what it means to accept it and allow and continue, whereas maybe some parents would not be able to do that because the death of a child is so tragic and in some way against nature. Is in the context of a system or a way of thinking that she grew up in. And that's a good thing because it provides an architecture of meaning that is hard to manufacture by yourself.
Yeah, you can't just go out and start from scratch. And people that do just end up making some new weird cult that, they end up making a documentary about it 20 years later about how they all failed. You can't start from scratch, I guess.
And
well, I guess that wasn't the point of what you were saying, but the point, I guess, was that you need this architecture of belief to find meaning in the world, but there are alternate architectures of belief, I guess.
Yeah, I think so.
I don't think that they're necessarily all created equal.
I would agree with that too.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But, there seems to be a benefit to a positive belief. You have to be like a binary 1 versus 0. You can't just sit like in negative. Not. I disagree with everything. I'm a skeptic. You have to. Even being a skeptic is still like a affirmation towards this structure of belief. Like I affirmatively say that is a negative or something. You know what I mean?
That's something that I've been contending with a lot recently because, sort of as a more atheistically inclined person, the scientific worldview is not one that, if you were to completely look at the world as it is empirically, rationally, you wouldn't be able to by yourself derive a deep sense of meaning, and you would miss out on a lot of insights if you were to say, well, 6,000 years ago, people sacrificed goats, and that's nonsense. Yeah, forget about it. It's stupid. I mean, why did they sacrifice goats?
Heathens. Well, they were stupid, and we're better now.
Worldview that caused them to sacrifice goats, and in what sense does the mythology telescoped around us provide a shoulders to stand on, so that we can stand on the shoulders of giants, rather than say only what is scientifically true is where I derive values, and sort of why.
Right. And obviously science is good, and there's great things we've learned from it. But I don't like the new there are people that have a new modern science conceit of like, this is the greatest time in all aspects. We know everything now. We're super geniuses. Like, they're not going to fuck anything up with their new science or cause any new problems or something. Or, like you said, disregard these cultures of the past are antiquated. They know nothing. They weren't intelligent. I mean, now we have the real intelligence.
Right.
I know. Really, where
And
we're
the
at
traditions
now
of
is
our
just
real
is the
intelligence is, yeah.
they're lucky to be here where they are now. It's not so much that they're really as smart as the technology. It's just you just happen to be at the end of the curve. You ended
Right.
up here.
Well, and where did those things come from?
Exactly.
We talked
Those
about
sheep
alchemy
people that were
gave
slaughtering them,
rise
yeah.
to alchemy gave rise to
You should be
modern
thankful
science
for
and,
goat sacrifices. I
Yeah.
mean, that goat sacrifices lead to spaceships eventually. Well, I mean,
Eventually.
maybe, yeah.
It's true.
Technically, it takes you from a monkey to
having a deep appreciation of I think this is something that I've maybe more come to reading a lot more Campbell and Jung is having a deeper appreciation for the gradual sedimentary buildup of culture, and maybe that last Peterson book that we read, that gradual sedimentary buildup of culture as a sort of telescoped thing around us that we swim in as children and then transcend to forge a new path, as something that has to be utilized. Otherwise, things might become too nihilistic, and things might lead to the purely sort of postmodern ways of thinking, which if left to its own devices leads to chaos. Not to say that anything, because I love objective science and I think it's great.
Oh yeah.
But I'm also not religious. But
I mean, nobody wants religious loons running the government. I would say I
Right.
am religious, and I don't want a religious president because I doubt he believes what I believe. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
right.
but yeah, objective science is great, and it should be used for its purpose. But like, there's people that will act like an objective fact is like I don't know. I can't think how to phrase it right now, but you can't make like a reason out of an objective fact. There's different modes of experiencing a thing. Like Jordan
Right.
Peterson talked about, the thing that's on the counter. It has an empirical weight, a size, a dimension, but depending on what the object is, it has a different meaning to the child that might reach for it. It could be hot.
There's
It
a
could
valence.
It could
a
be
valence
food. There's a
relative to
valence
its- yeah.
There's a valence quality that empirical science kind of disregards to a certain degree.
Yes.
And not only that, but like there is. I feel like when people say objective science or empirical science, they act like we can know things for a certainty. We still have to ballpark things. Even numbers themselves are a ballpark.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
When we launch a rocket, we do rocket science. We're still like getting it in within a margin of error. It's not like it hit the number. So you never even people that say they know things objectively or empirically never know things for certain. That's why I like philosopher Karl Popper. He's I guess called a post-positivist, which is to believe that I'm sure there is an absolutely true, the best way to launch a spaceship that's right on the numbers, but based on our limited ability, because we're all subjective perspectives combined into an objective perspective, we have to ballpark it, and that's all we're going to get.
It's all just heuristics. We develop heuristics which allow us to sort of get as good as we can get.
Right.
It's usable.
The thing
It's
is, like,
functional.
about numbers though, like
Yeah.
the fact that we can have a subjective opinion in reference to an objective, it kind of implies that there is an absolute possibility. Like, if we had the numbers as they actually are, we would know what the truth is. So that means that truth does exist if you make a construct for it, but you're never going to know it.
Right.
You can only
Well,
ballpark it.
Isn't that's Laplace's demon? Laplace's demon is the hypothetical being that's able to know the position and velocity of every particle in the universe, and so can project the universe backward in time and forward in time and see the whole object of the universe as a thing, as an object, because he knows the current position, but we are incapable of knowing that. I think where you and I probably differ is that I sort of I try not to, and I don't really place any, well, some maybe, but importance on the any particular worldview is going to change over time because of human processes. Cultures change things. The zeitgeist is always shifting forward. Norms change, behaviors change, the concept of right and wrong changes. I like to go to Catholic Mass. I like to go to the Hindu temple. I like to go to the Buddhist temple. I like to swim around in all of it, because all of it has been dipped in the ink of the past. And when I go to the Buddhist, the Thai Buddhist temple near my house, and I partake in the meal and the prayer, or I go to the Hindu temple, or I go to the Catholic Mass, I'm swimming in the embroidery of the past, and that to me gives me great meaning. But that's not to say this one I must know that this one is somehow right or superior. I like it all.
I agree, and I don't have any reason to or anymore. Or I don't want to like argue with anybody. I'll just have my own beliefs on the side, and I mean, there's nothing to argue about.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
I guess I would just more put it in the context of, and it has nothing to do with whatever my religious beliefs are. I would say like I'm just thinking now of like science and objectivity and how people throw around their opinions, which is where they act like they know absolute truth about anything that's empirical, where it's impossible to know anything for certain. There's only ballparking, I guess.
Here, I think, maybe this is a way. Yeah,
that's
yes.
And so that's why I say the only thing I would be certain about would be religion, because that's faith, and that's always quote unquote bullshit. That's always faith. It has nothing to do with empiricism. It's always a leap, because that's what faith is about. I guess
that's what being human is about. So everything that we've ever done as a species, everything that has ever allowed us to attain anything new, has been a heuristic of some kind, whether it's been understanding the motion of the planets and the stars that allow us to predict seasons, or all of these things are just heuristics, ways, approximations that allow us to take one step forward, or a tool to use that allows us to get to the next thing. Okay, maybe it's not the most objective, perfect thing, but it is a thing which gets us somewhere. It's not stasis, and it's not moving backward. So it's all kind of heuristics in a way. And so maybe if you choose to live in the prefrontal cortex, and if you choose to be a human being in that sense, which everyone does, then you choose to live in a subjective space, and you choose to live in a space where there is no such thing as meaning in the human sort of domain is inherently subjective, changing, personal. And you can't derive that from, if you find out something about how spaceships move, or that's useful, but that's not maybe the meaning of life, or that's not the only place that the meaning of life comes from, right? So it's the whole tapestry is just kind of a collage of stuff that we jumble against that provides us some sort of feeling of purpose.
It's just,
and meaning.
I guess the thing about like knowing that the universe is going to end means there's no meaning in life, right? It's like Woody Allen when he's in the dad loves that scene. He always talks about it. You remember that scene or no?
Yeah, sure. He says he found out that the universe will
is
reach maximum
expanding,
entropy, and it'll result in a heat death.
So what's the point of anything?
Yeah,
Alvy, that'll be billions and billions of years from now. So why don't we just enjoy ourselves while we can?
That should be the philosophy of life. Maybe not in the hedonistic sense, but
yeah.
But that's a good philosophy to live by.
I guess so. Yeah,
that's the philosophy.
Well, it's just, I guess it's also down to like what's actionable too or useful. Like even if that is true, I mean, it will be billions and billions of years from now. You can't just sit around worrying about it.
Right.
You gotta get up and go to Dollar General and buy some macaroni and cheese or something.
Yeah,
to make for dinner, or you're gonna get hungry.
Dollar General. Yeah, that's exactly right. You got to go to Donald. You got to eat something, or you're going to be hungry. At least bodily urges should tell you that we don't live in the time scale of billions of years, and the scale
Yeah, but
in
see,
that
then you go to
20-minute
Dollar General
monologue
every
there-
day. Every day, there's inverse qualities too. You go to Dollar General every day and eat mac and cheese every day, but then you're 500 to 600 pounds,
Right.
and you wish that the universe would break up because you're so
Yeah.
unhappy with where you're at.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's always balance.
Right. Right. Exactly. Well, and also, it's just sort of like life doesn't exist on that time scale. The immensity that occurs in the scene or the scenes in Tree of Life of creation and evolution is sort of like that's the backdrop. That's what it really is. That's the objective reality. But let's bring it to the domain that actually matters to us, because we are that. And if this were a movie about rats, then it would be a rat story about rats, and there would be rat culture and rat religion, and there would be the
Disney
rat
movies.
Yeah, exactly.
Mickey Mouse is a rat.
Do you know what I mean, though?
Yeah, I do.
It's sort of like this is the whole thing, but let's bring it down to the view of this species and what it means to this species.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what's interesting, that they do reflect each other in some way. You know, that there's microcosms and macrocosms. Everything matches. Like you see those pictures of the universe that look like neurons in the human brain. Have you ever seen that? Or no? Or the certain neural. Whatever
There's
the
the macro scale of there are.
So they do the same thing in Baraka, like with the bloodstream, basically, and the flow of traffic, I think. Or not.
That would be for the fractals, right? So
fractals, yeah, they operate the same way. They're all like it's the same ratio of growth, basically, that like rivers take and blood vessels take. It's like the universe is mathematically sound. Like it's all going on the same.
Right.
Yeah, there's the same.
All the way
parts.
up and all the way down.
And we haven't found the end of it or the beginning of it, which is what's really crazy too.
That's the crazy thing. It kind of tells me that maybe the simulation thing is a real deal.
And if the simulation thing is real, then you need to pick a religion, right? Because obviously the video game is telling you something.
Well,
or maybe you shouldn't.
That's not what I take away from it. What I take away from it is I need to be in the highlights reel. I need to be at least interesting enough so that they save me and don't delete me, right? So if they're picking people, then I need to be. Oh man, have you seen Luke? Have you seen Luke from 2004 to 2019? Good stuff. Check it out. I don't want to be deleted or not put in the update. You know what I mean? If there's an update coming, I want to be in the update. I don't want to be left behind.
There haven't been any glitches though. You'd think there'd be a single glitch. If it's a projection, it's not man-made, because we would have messed up the design a lot worse than this.
Yeah. Well, I think inherently it's not man-made. It's if we're living in a simulation.
I'm just saying, if there's a simulation, we didn't make it because it would be a lot worse.
Well, we didn't make it in our current state, but whoever has made it,
whoever it is, isn't we enough to be called we, because it's not. Yeah, it's too good. It's
right. It's probably
no
artificial intelligence and a computing power beyond our ability.
Yeah, I don't really buy the simulation. Like, well, I guess the whole thing is like, what do we mean by simulation? Because there's so many like ways to say what existence is that like a definition of simulation could fit basically any.
Well, the simulation theory is basically that if we say that technology proceeds at a linear rate, and
right, okay, I get that, but
the probability is that we're in a simulation.
I don't think so.
But also then a lot of leading physicists, not that I know what I'm talking about, but a lot of leading physicists talk about the mathematical structure of reality, and that the real is Hilbert space. Hilbert space is the place where all particles are in quantum superposition, and they have any number of directions that they can decay into.
It's related to parallel universes.
Yeah. So when you observe a particle and it becomes
see, I don't buy that whole like a quantum mechanics or quantum mathematics. I feel like that's It's like a bullshit way of saying this is how we know what we don't know. Like, we can't quantify it, so we're just going to call it quantum mechanics. It's this weird kind of math that we just don't understand. And what it means is that something may or may not be something because we don't yet know how to measure it specifically.
Well, but you have to be on the forefront of that field in order to be able to say that, whether or not it is, right? Because
I think I can look at it from over here and say that if you're saying something does or does not exist because I can't measure it for sure, you probably just don't know how to measure it.
But some people would say, I just read a book about this, some people would say that all exist.
Oh, it all exists, and it does or does not react.
The reality of a particle is Hilbert space, which is the possibility of all existence. And when something becomes observed, then it decays into one
How is that
state
not
or
a
another.
causal reaction?
But both are real. The thing that's real is the mathematical dimension of Hilbert space, and our version of it is just one branch on the tree of possibilities, and all of them happen.
Well, either way, I don't like parallel universes. I think that's bullshit, and I think categorizing things as quantum is bullshit too. That's all.
I think that's. But wouldn't you have to have a deep understanding of it before you could dismiss it? When you have to say, when you have to know,
yeah, you would.
I can't even say.
Well, I mean,
I certainly
where do I
don't
need
know
to
the
know?
math of it. I can't say, oh, this is the math. I can barely describe what I.
Well, it's like
read
the whole
based on the book I read just
Schrodinger's
now.
cat thing. Like the cat is either alive or dead
Right.
because you don't know it exists in two states. No, it doesn't. It's either alive or it's dead. Whether or not I know it has nothing to do with the reality. It's turning like relativity into absolutes from in a relative
Schrodinger's
perspective.
cat is just a way to macro scale something that is quantum, and it's
That's what I'm saying.
Something is
That's
unknown, but actually that example was created to try to disprove it, to try to say it's not. But because a macro object like a cat is entangled with all other particles, then actually that example is not great anyway, because there's air in the box.
Right?
Right?
No, that's not about what the thing in the box is. It's about whether or not it's there, and whether or not seeing that it's there means that it's there, or whether or not that it's being observed affects its existence. It doesn't matter what the cat is, right?
Well,
Could be an atom in a basket.
Right. Let's say an atom. It seems like, and it seems pretty clear from a whole bunch of experiments, that a particle is in a superposition until it's observed. And then once it's observed, it is either seen in one state or another state.
Okay, so that's fine. So you could say it's causal, or we don't understand why it reacts in a certain situation. So what I'm saying is it's bullshit to then place upon that phenomena a superstructure of understanding called quantum, which is that certain things act in a way that we don't understand, so we're going to call them ununderstandable.
That's not what quantum means, though. Quantum means so.
Isn't quantum the lack of ability
to? It's an
to
exploration. No, that's not what quantum means. Right now,
I thought the quantum state was basically not being able to know which way it would go.
Right. The quantum state is uncertainty about the.
It's an uncertainty principle.
The particle is in a superposition of states. The superposition is when the particle is in both up and down at the same time, or could be in both, and that's how quantum computers work. So you could say that, well, it's not something you can even disagree with, because quantum computers work on the principle of superposition, and if superposition were a real thing, then quantum computers wouldn't work.
It's a quantification, but I feel like what people have made of that are theories like parallel universes. That's why I'm saying it's bullshit. Because it's this, then that implies that there's
But people are allowed to. But theories are the things which are tentacles, which allow us to move forward in our understanding of the universe, right? I mean, someone says, if someone says quantum or the superposition
Okay,
is what
yeah,
allows
I get,
us to, just, to
that's all it
posit
is. It's
maybe
just like a
maybe
box.
a
Okay, yeah,
universe.
I'm fine with it being like this type of quantification of what we don't know how to measure as well as we know how to measure other things, but we still know how to use it practically. I guess I just don't like the implications for the parallel universes. Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about. I just know that I didn't like it before. I probably have no reason to. I'm probably an idiot. People will make fun of me. But
wouldn't say I don't think physicists would all agree on what it means, right? I think everybody agrees on the products that the Schrödinger equation clearly describes. It says if these factors are in this is the whole situation, then you put all of the factors into the Schrödinger equation and you get this result, and that's the result. So it's extremely accurate, but then the meaning of that is maybe what's more up for interpretation. Why is it like that? Where does gravity come from? And does it mean that there are parallel universes?
Don't know what I'm
but then
talking
that's
about.
all speculation, and that's like going to the moon. That's like trying to explore into the unknown. That's the thing that allows for more understanding of the universe, right?
It is, but I think I just thought I had read like a criticism of quantum mechanics or like just quantum mathematics in general, that it had kind of been a dead end because of how it was categorized. That it wasn't leading to more exploration. It was kind of like people were trying to actually solve why that was happening, and then at a certain point it was kind of given up on. I might be completely wrong and
I
just
think the given up on
as
thing. The given up on thing, I think, was about how once the Schrödinger equation was decided upon as this thing that produces great and accurate results, then there was no more questioning.
A certain level of practicality let them
okay,
just go
it works.
forward
Let's not think too much about what it all means.
I don't understand enough to talk about it at all, really. So I should stop before I look any dumber than I am.
The weirdos on the edge are the ones who maybe are throwing in parallel universes, which I think is great, because that sort of speculation is what, even if it's wrong, allows for a greater understanding of the universe, right?
I suppose so.
Anyway, I wanted to. I think there's one more question I wanted to ask about the film.
Terrence Malick film, Tree of Life.
Tree of Life, the film we're talking about after that foray into things neither of us know.
I was going to say I have to use the restroom pretty soon.
Okay,
go and come back, or I can
got one more
take your question.
Got one more question for you, bro. The father character, his father, Jack's father,
Brad Pitt,
yeah, Aldo Ray, what's his name in Inglourious Bastards?
I forget his last name.
Aldo Ray, I think it's Aldo Ray.
No.
Why isn't he able to find peace in simplicity in his family? Why does it tend to be that, I think especially men don't just find meaning in raising a couple of kids? He says, my life is all, what does he call it? All nothing. He says, it's all I drew a zilch or something like that. He says, all I got is you. He's talking about his kids, that his only
That's a good Brad Pitt.
Realizes that his achievement is his children, finally, after trying to make deals in China and trying to become a successful man who wants to be known for his greatness and his works. But the question is, why is it that I think more men have that conqueror's urge, that urge to be respected for, and I have that to an insane degree, I think.
Yeah, I want
people to I want people to look at me and go, damn, why am I jealous? That's what I want, but I don't like that I want that. I think it's negative. Is that a social I don't know thing that pops out of our culture, or is that something universally male?
The Seinfeld thing. I'm sure it doesn't come from Seinfeld, but men hunt and women nest or something. I forget. which is that's terrible. Should never have happened that way.
Well, there are
Don't wanna get
matriarchal societies, but
Yeah,
what do you make
typically.
what do you make of his dissatisfaction with his great
I don't know.
situation? I mean, he's a beautiful house,
Is it a
wife and kids, plays the piano, got some cabbages growing. Why can't he just
It could
happy?
be yeah, I guess I don't know what it is exactly. Byproduct of like biology, like testosterone, or maybe what human men have been doing for centuries, based on like how hard we used to struggle as hunter gatherers. I mean, how long were we hunter gatherers?
Got to be at least 10 years more, maybe even more.
10 to 12 years hunter gathering. That would lead one to continue to want to hunt and gather. While the way of grace might come more naturally to the one who was tending to children and whatnot, because grace is more necessary when dealing with a bunch of little brats.
Yeah.
You got to have a graceful nature.
Look at all that I've gathered. Look at what I've hunted. Do you see the deer that I killed? Do you see the sausages I gathered?
Luke, have you seen the deer that he killed? He's a great hunter.
I gathered 34 German bratwursts from the bratwurst tree that I found.
Luke went to Dollar General and he bought a mac and cheese. Brought it home to his wife. She cooked it for the kids.
Now I'm proud of myself.
Well, all of our success as a society, this is where Jordan Peterson comes in with his trying to help all these young men, and just society in general, with the whatever revolutions we've gone through recently as a culture, where it's no longer necessary for women to be the matriarchal figures or the father to be the father. So it's we're getting to a point where all these old structures are.
Well, I think that's what I'm coming down to, is that it's just maybe is it just a misfiring? Is it just masturbation? I mean, is it just you know what I'm saying? Is it just there's these ancient urges which now manifest in a guy?
You're saying is it something more like meaningful? Like there's actually something inherent to. It seems like
if someone achieves greatness and is a titan of industry or something like that, is there something inherently great about that, or is that just a byproduct of some deeper urge, and actually it's meaningless and means nothing? You know, do you
you got like a drop more in the gene pool or something of something or other.
Yeah,
won the lottery. I don't know. Well, I mean, if everything's causal, then it is all technically. I mean, nothing to take credit for, right?
Yeah.
Just like along for the ride. But you can't really live life that way. So I don't know. It seems like most of the gender role stuff it's got to have been from necessity, right? Coming along through the history. I don't know. It's really hard to say. Do you think? What about you? Do you think that there is something inherently great about creating a Steve Jobs like company called Apple?
No, I don't. I think it's. I mean, in the relative sense, in that it feels
there's personal
good.
fulfillment in it.
Yeah, there's personal fulfillment, but I think that's about it. I think the person who's the stay-at-home dad who raises his kids, or the stay-at-home mom who raises her kids, or I don't think that there's any sort of objective greatness about someone who achieves great things for humanity. I mean, people say, for example, an Elon Musk type person who invents the Cybertruck or smashes
saves
the windows,
humanity,
saves humanity, and
well, if
sends
he gets
us
to Mars,
it's cool, and it's
humanity.
and you could take each accomplishment sort of one by one and say, okay, human civilization was saved by our ability to travel to Mars. Okay, you could say that one by one, but as a thing, to say objectively that the person who achieves more is somehow better, then you'd have to say, well, that was Caesar better, because Caesar was a monster in a lot of ways, and he probably killed a lot of Gauls who didn't deserve to die, and so I don't think making that sort of declaration really makes a lot of sense. And I think.
Did you get through Breaking Bad? This relates to that.
Not finished with that yet.
How far are you?
Season 3.
How could you be stuck in season 3?
My wife is taking a break.
You just have to watch it without her.
No, I
Pretend you never
can't do
saw it.
It's our thing.
All right. Well, I mean, Walter
now,
White.
You know what she says now? She says, "Hey, Luke, can you please play God of War?" She makes me play video games now, and she likes to watch me play video games. My wife says to me, "Can you please play more video games?"
You should be watching more TV. Just so that you could know, like, well, I mean, no spoilers or anything.
No, spoil.
No, I won't spoil. You should
I know
watch.
what happens. I know what happens in the whole series. I know everything.
Well, it's just, Walter White, he has that whole thing.
Right.
His, like, he doesn't necessarily to end up need to be doing what he's doing. He says it's a need at the beginning, but it's actually more about him just wanting to achieve some sort of personal satisfaction for the things he thought he could have done and didn't get before, or, things like that.
Yeah. So I think that's what it comes down to, how it feels.
But there's plenty of rotten old bastards, though, sitting up in towers in Manhattan probably going like, they're like 90 years old, and they every second was a joy. I wish I would have gutted them all. All of his the people that he was fighting against. Maybe deep down in their core they actually do have some lack. They probably don't have good family life or something. But I don't know. Maybe some of them are just, they have no morals, no empathy. Just
but that's what gives them a sense of meaning and purpose.
Right. Money.
Money.
See? And I've got it.
But somehow we inherently know when the catharsis happens for Jack's father, we know that somehow is an improvement. Somehow, subconsciously, we recognize that as a step forward, as a step in the right direction.
For him to pass it to his sons and have them be successful?
No, for him to realize that he's missed missed appreciating his. He
takes
children.
A step back towards reality, like towards appreciating the goodness that he does have.
Yeah, he's going to live in a smaller house now. He's going to be. Well, I mean, they live in a nice house as people when their son dies. They live in a nice house. That's a very nice, beautiful glass house. Must have done pretty well.
Well, in Knight of Cups, there's a sequence with the father, and I think they're talking about the brother that died, and like the father's like washing blood off of his hands into a bowl. So I don't know if Malick forgives his father for something. I don't know. I don't know if he ever thought that he got to some better place. Maybe.
That's interesting. Yeah, I was realizing that just the house that they're in when they realize their son, or when they get the letter
later on,
son has died, that's a really nice house.
Yeah, that's true. It is better than their other house, and they're moving out like at the end of the movie, right? To go to a new house. I don't know if that's
maybe
the house they're going to.
Starts getting Dad of the Year checks or something.
Well, he's near an airplane. I guess he's probably flying to some oil field to take over or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
When he finds out his son is dying or dead.
He's a propeller mechanic.
Very successful.
Very successful propeller. Puts oil in the propellers. I thought he was going to walk into the propellers like
Hemingway.
Hemingway, yeah.
Or that kid from Freddy Got Fingered.
I don't remember that part.
Oh, I think at the end of the movie, this kid gets injured graphically and horribly through the whole film, and I think at the end he like walks into a propeller blade. And anyway,
sounds gross.
If you remember, it is gross, but in the movie it's kind of funny because it's a funny movie.
I don't really remember what happens in that movie.
If you watch clips, though, it's still really funny. If you've been watching Red Letter Media, Mike, they did a review on Freddy Got Fingered, and Mike is a big fan, actually.
Really?
They kind of discuss it being a cult classic of comedy that was Tom Green deconstructing what like Hollywood comedies were at the time, and they gave him money to make a movie, a comedy movie, and he made like a deconstruction of comedies that was intentionally like one of the worst movies ever. And in the movie, he gets money and wastes it. So he's like telling you what he's doing. It's pretty. You should watch it. I suggest that the review of Freddy Got Fingered.
So it's not just a dumb movie about a guy who.
No, it might be like a meta genius movie about how he's the most horrible character in the world, and it's intentional. And Tom Green's pretty smart. It's the only movie he ever made. And if you watch it, like with this interpretation that Mike is doing on it, it does seem like it's true. He's really just wasting the studio's money for fun.
Maybe that's our next discussion.
Freddy got fingered.
First
it's
is
funny.
Tree of Life, followed by Freddy Got Fingered.
We should have done a combo, a double feature.
double.
You got Figured and Tree of Life combo.
Yeah.
What's the meaning? Yeah.
What is the elephant scene? What does it mean? Isn't there an elephant scene?
I think there's an elephant scene. It's I mean that I don't find that particular part funny, but the relationship between Tom and his dad, he's always saying things that he's doing to his dad, and his dad just goes completely ballistic, screaming at him. I don't know.
I have
find
almost
Tom
no
to be
memory of
funny.
it. Almost no memory.
You got to watch that review. It'll make you laugh. Then the scenes
right.
in the movie are very funny, actually.
Red
The
letter
cheese
movie.
sandwich. You remember the cheese sandwich scene when the lady asked for a cheese sandwich and he
Nope.
"Is enough cheese for you?" And he keeps piling it higher and higher. It's really stupid, but it's good.
I'll have to rewatch. I'll watch the review first and then see if the movie's worth rewatching.
I bet the
I think I saw
review
it
will
in
probably give you enough of
grade.
the movie to
Yeah.
just appreciate it from there at a distance.
Yeah.
Harlan Williams is in there. He's a very underrated, funny person.
Mm.
The guy from Rocket Man. Actually,
yeah.
I would like to do a review on. We're not. Our show isn't called Review. What's the show called?
Gray Space.
Gray Space.
Yeah.
Is there a version of what we're doing now though on the show, like a sub
Film
list?
discussions.
Okay, I'd like to do a film discussion on Rocket Man.
Yeah, it's a good movie. It's
Just a short
classic.
one.
It's a classic.
Maybe I would just come on here and just give my 5 to 10 minute
And I just listen for 5 or 10
class
minutes.
project.
You got to make sure you have slides that cover my face.
Yeah.
Yeah.